Hi, I'm your cult boyfriend. My name is Zach, and I've gathered you here today to talk about the first season of Veronica Mars, one of my favorite things ever. Veronica Mars is probably my comfort show, and I think it might be my favorite show as well. It makes me feel really happy. Honestly, it makes me feel so happy. I love spending time with these people. Veronica Mars, I think, is a really good role model. I think she's a good hero. And this show came out in 2004. I was 14 when the season was on television. And I definitely looked up to Veronica Mars. She was an incredible kind of role model. I love so many of her qualities. I love her sensitivity. I love her protectiveness. I love her determination. I love her bravery, and I love her resolve, and I love how unforgiving she can be. I love Veronica Mars. I have her name tattooed on my body twice. I think you can kind of see one there. It's a marshmallow. Her fans are called marshmallows. Based on like one line from the first season, you're a marshmallow, Veronica Mars. It's one of the best lines, but still, there's Veronica Mars right there. And I also have one. I'm not gonna reveal the whole thing, but yeah, it says Veronica Mars on my chest. So yeah, I would consider myself a super fan of this show. Greatest marshmallow ever. I love this show. It means a lot to me. Um, and I love like every character to death. And I think Veronica is simply one of the best characters ever created. And I think that Kristen Bell outdoes herself again and again and again and again and again. I think that Kristen Bell, I think she is more than extraordinary as Veronica Mars. I think she's really, really, really important to the person that I am and the things that I can't help but believe in that make me who I am, much like Veronica. So season one of Veronica Mars. Veronica Mars is that little show that could. It always had to deal with studio interference. It was always on the verge of being canceled, but the fan dedication was so strong that this brave little show was able to continue and continue and continue in new forms and in new ways. I think a lot of people do consider the first season to be the best Veronica Mars season, and while I think this season is beautiful, I think it's brilliant. I personally think that season two is Veronica Mars at its peak. I think that that has the best villain, the most fascinating dynamics, the most interesting episodes, the funniest moments, the most sardonic ones, and I think that season two is masterful. I also think season one is masterful, but it just doesn't hit as hard, but it's still brilliant. This season centers around the death of Lily Kane, played wonderfully, hauntingly, gorgeously by Amanda Seyfried. Incredible character, incredible icon, incredible symbol. But let's get into that symbol. Allow me to just throw out all of my major themes in one fell swoop, in one gigantic movement. Let me just put out all of my themes, all of my points of interest, all of my points of investigation out for you, and we can bounce in between them. So, with the first season of Veronica Mars, we're going to talk about neo noir in a post Columbine, post 9/11 world, Lily Kane as the ghost of the teen dream, the idolization of parental and authority figures, the celebrity of their absences, the celebrity of their representations, teen dreams bludgeoned by the idealized forms of celebrity and success. Are going to talk about rape culture, surveillance, and how Lily rejected the surveillance fetishism of her era by exploiting it and punishing it. And she was murdered for that rebellious act. So what's the first thing I said? That's a lot. That's a lot, but we're going to go into it now. So don't worry. Um, Neo noir. This show is certainly inspired by, Philip Marlowe, by James Elroy, by the crime pictures of the 30s, 40s, and 50s. And it made me interested in neo noir. When does noir gain prominence in the public favor? When does noir find itself relevant? at very specific times. I would say originally film noir, it's a beautiful black and white photography, which I think poetically engages with the gray areas of nihilistic moral reality that a lot of people were facing. It grew into prominence during the 30s, during the Great Depression, when people needed something that was a bit more nihilistic, a bit darker, a bit misanthropic. And I think that's the key word here because it reached the zenith of its popularity after the Second World War, after we had soldiers coming home who were defeated, who had witnessed such horrors. America had committed horrors by dropping a nuclear bomb on Japan. The Holocaust is a reality. Women are in the workplace, raining cats and dogs. It's anarchy. I'm kidding, but not exactly. A lot of people like to call like film noir, charge its femme fatale archetypes, the dynamics between men and women in it as sexist or misogynistic, and I think that that misses the point entirely. And it's one we covered just now. A film noir is not sexist. It's not simply misogynistic. Film noir is misanthropic, as it should be. Misanthropic in the most cosmically pessimistic way possible. These are pessimistic fantasies. These are hyper-violent, nearly Shakespearean tragedies writ large. That's what film noir is. And it normally comes when a culture is trying to reconcile something that they have experienced, something tragic, something massive, like the Second World War. And that's why film noir was so popular then. That's why Bogey and Cagney and Richard Widmark, Jules Dassin and fucking Billy Wilder were making all these incredible noir films at the time. Because we needed that then. Because the world was morally inept. And we needed some more reprehensible, doomed, and unlikable characters to live our own demises through and to channel our misanthropy into more determined and specific stars and tropes. And a whole world of tropes, a whole world of cliches was born from the explosion of film noir in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. Then it went away. Some say it went away with Touch of Evil. Why not? Let's agree. Give Orson Welles that credit where he murdered an entire genre by making one film noir that was just too good for the genre to stand. And then I think it came back in a large way with like Chinatown, a couple of films in late 60s and early 70s. I believe it came back when our culture, the Western world, was dealing with Vietnam and the horrors that were both witnessed and committed there by those in the West. And it came back in 2004 with Veronica Mars, and of course there's films like Rian Johnson's Brick or Rodriguez and Miller's Sin City. There are quite a few neo-noirs that came out at this time. What is so tragic about 2004? Well, it's something I talk about a lot on the channel. This is a post-Columbine, post-9/11 world. And Veronica Mars gives us the same sort of universe that One Tree Hill gives us in a certain way, in that everything is random. That the universe necessarily does pick favorites, but they pick them at random. It's a lottery. That the world is full of random criminal acts, and it's mostly pessimistic, and you can't really trust anyone. So these tropes of noir, and Veronica Mars being a show infused with a neo-noir attitude and like behavioral like personality, Veronica Mars is a perfect landscape for the neo-noir language. Because young people, the world that they see, in a world where God is dead and we have killed him, in a world where you're not safe at school, in a world where you're not safe anywhere, in a world where terror seems to be everywhere, in a world where you can't trust your government, in a world where your government are evil, in a world where nothing matters anymore. Misanthropy rules again. Film noir returns. And these tropes are utilized perfectly well in the first season of Veronica Mars. Veronica Mars has a lot in common with another show that we just finished covering on the channel called The OC. I think that Veronica Mars, I think that Neptune, where the show takes place, is a fictionalized version of Orange County. So we get a much more unforgiving and critical look at class disparity, at social stratification through Veronica Mars, while dealing in the same sort of world universe as the OC. Which isn't saying anything against the OC. That is a flaw within the OC, but the OC were kind of focusing on psychosexual, extremely, extremely intimate concepts and qualities, existential ones with its characters. Veronica Mars is a bit more dedicated to class stratification. Lily Kane, the ghost of the teen dream. I think that Lily Kane represents something that was lost through 9/11, through Columbine, a piece of innocence that was lost within youth culture, a liberating feeling, a sexualized feeling, a feeling of wild kindness and freedom that was lost, that was identified and then punished by the authority figures, by the concept of celebrity, by the parents, the very people who we expect to be guardians, we meaning young people, the teenagers watching this show. I think they saw within Lily Kane the idealized form of the American dream, which is a ghost now, which has been murdered, which has been slain by those who we trust most, those who protect us most, will exploit us and will secretly record us and track us. We live in a surveillance culture, a surveillance state, because also this is the birth of not the birth of the internet, but it's certainly the birth of MySpace, of social media, the birth of the concept as the internet as a truly effective means of expression and cultural representation, of existence, a lived experience, so to speak. And that sort of surveillance, the fact that we are being surveilled, that we are being recorded, and we follow these movements so carefully that they're almost choreographed by those poisonous figures of authority. Lily Kane, the teen dream, the death of a fetishistic era. We deal with rape culture through an entire episode called A Trip to the Dentist, where Veronica tries to figure out what exactly happened to her the night that she believes that she was raped. I like that that's where we meet Beaver Cassidy for the first time in an antagonistic place. I think he's like introduced in the episode previous, but this is where he is a bit more spotlighted, which really hints at a future nemesis dynamic to come. I think that Beaver is one of the most fascinating characters on Veronica Mars, but we'll talk about him next season. Don't worry, next season I will focus on Cassidy Casablancas a lot, and I'm looking forward to it. I think that Veronica Mars shows us a world where people are falling into tropes, where people are behaving in ways that feel scripted because our lives are not a movie, or maybe they are. Maybe we fall into these tropes, these easily identifiable ones from film noir, because the moral landscape that young people see is just obsessed with not only itself, but its own sins. Logan Echolls is a fascinating character. Jason Dohring is extraordinary. He moves like a ballet dancer. He moves with a certain kind of violent grace. He's always doing like something jerky that feels so fluid, right? It speaks to his pitch perfect characterization. I think he's a great example of, I could not believe I felt so much for this character, given the fact that the first like 9 or 10 episodes position him to be one of the worst, most spoiled kids in the world. This is a kid who coordinated bum fights, right? And yet at the very end of the season, he's won my heart. I think this speaks to Jason Dohring's acting abilities more than the composition, because I would actually be surprised if Logan was always intended for Veronica. There's no fucking way. I think they saw the undeniable chemistry between Kristen Bell and Jason Dohring, and they capitalized on that like they should have. I think that was great, because also over the course of the show, you realize that Duncan Kane is not a very good character, and they don't have a decent chemistry. It was awkward because for a moment there they thought they might have been related and might have slept together, and although they weren't, you know, whew, close call, right? I do think that their chemistry is not romantic. So I think that Logan is perfect for Veronica, and I think we're going to end up talking about that relationship until the end of this series. But Logan is fascinating as this poor little rich boy kind of archetype. And I think he's great as the poor little rich boy, this self hating narcissist. It's a fascinating character. He's self destructive, he's explosive, he's violent, and he's hypersensitive. Fascinating things to Jason Dohring's performance when he commits a violent act. Uh, his acting is incredible. So he always steps to the side with his mouth agape a bit, like something's come over him. Like he's possessed so fiercely by an aggressive feeling. He's possessed so fiercely by the moment that he is completely within that violent moment. And maybe it's a point where he feels truly alive. Um, he hates himself so much that it's very difficult to get to the sincerity beneath. But I think through Veronica comes into this moral nihilism, this empty landscape, this misanthropic landscape, and helps certain tropes, certain archetypes, certain characters within it reach a new sort of postmodern sincerity. Sure, they start off as tropes, but these tropes are deconstructed instantly and instantaneously. They are fleshed out and given a sort of liberation that is not normally afforded to these sorts of disciplines, these sorts of frameworks within this kind of limiting world of neo-noir teen drama. Actually, that's it. It's by infusing neo-noir with teen drama that these characters within it, everything benefits from it in a sincere way. Because in teen drama, you are allowed to be as hysterical as you want to be, essentially, because everything is far more intense when you are a teenager. Everything is more exaggerated because everything means more. Everything has a lot more weight to it. Film noir is kind of the same way. Every single movement means so much because everything is life for its death. And trust me, people will die. And if you take these two desperate forms of storytelling, these two desperate genres, and you put them together, then you possibly get the most desperate, most melodramatic stage for a huge opus about sincerity. Because you have teen drama with its characters who are dying to believe in something. They need some reason why they gotta go on, even if it is highly individualistic, even if it is something within themselves that's not inauthentic at all. They need to believe in something. What they want to believe more than anything else is in each other, in that what they're doing matters. That's the goal of teen drama. The goal of noir is misanthropy, is punishment. And I think that is the human condition. I think that's the human condition post 9/11, post Columbine. That's the human conundrum, because we have these parts of us that want to believe so bad, to believe in justice so badly. Yet there's this other part of us that is equally as large and even more oppressive, that is telling us there is no truth, there is no justice, nothing matters. But when Veronica Mars is able to make a statement, it makes one about justice. It makes one about young love. It makes one about passion. It makes one about teen dreams that were killed, being avenged. Veronica Mars, in a large way, for me, is a revenge fantasy, and the best of its kind. This is about Veronica Mars proving that a huge part of the character of teenagers was viciously, violently destroyed by incompetent and madly violent and psychopathic authority figures. Authority figures could be parental, authority figures could be those of celebrity. Veronica Mars believes justice will find those people. And justice does in this first season. I think Kristen Bell deserves all of the love in the world. I think she's extremely beautiful, but she's so fucking good in this show. Um, she deserves all of the love possible. I could never love her enough for her work on Veronica Mars. She understands this character so perfectly, and when I look at Veronica, I see something worth looking up to, and I always have ever since I was a teenager. I want to believe so deeply in this corpse of justice that I would die for it. But honestly, she cares about her friends so much. She cares about the victim, as you should, not necessarily about the punishment, although she does say, don't get mad, get even. That's revenge. Find them out. Put them on blast. I love Wallace so fucking much. Wallace is amazing. Great character, and that's probably one of the funnest dynamics here. I like it's somewhat rare in teen shows where like any show really where like a girl and a guy could have a platonic, like really deep friendship. But I'm glad we saw one here on Veronica Mars with Wallace and Veronica, and also like One Tree Hill did this with Lucas and Haley. So it wasn't entirely absent from the teen drama discussion. It's just that it mostly is. And I think that Wallace is a really heartfelt example of power of the individual against a system that wants to destroy you from all sides. I mean, the first time you see him, he's taped to a flagpole by Weevil, and he spends the rest of the time getting bullied by O9ers. Like, he's like Veronica, he's a true misfit. He doesn't belong on either side of the spectrum. But Veronica is very interesting because she used to belong to the O9er ultra elite crew until the goodness that she saw within that was exposed by the death of the teen dream. And she helps all corners of Neptune reach a new sincerity, or at least reach a sincere belief in revenge, payback. Payback for a youth lost to mass shootings and terror attacks. Payback to a youth lost by paranoia and constant world warfare. Payback for a world where misanthropic tropes are all too common in the lived teen experience of the mid 2000s. People wonder why millennials are so self-hating and can be seen as so helpless. It's because that's the fucking world we grew up in. I don't think any of us actually thought we would be alive to complain about it anymore. I don't think we were brought up to think about longevity or about living virtuously and with a just reason or resolve. I think Veronica Mars, well, I think there's a lot of authority figures out there who need to crumble and fall and cry. And of course, these authority figures and figures of celebrity are idolized by culture, by community, fetishized. The teen dream is fetishized through Amanda Seyfried. And although she could find liberating components within that fetishism, it's still an act of betrayal from authority and celebrity figures upon her. Amanda Seyfried was so good. One of my favorite scenes in this whole season is when Duncan is trying to get off of his meds because it makes him feel weird, and he starts seeing her ghost. I mean, I love that she is in this, in flashbacks, in ghostly appearances, but the best part is when she comes in there, like her face all bloody from being bludgeoned, blunt force trauma, right? And still in her cheerleading uniform because that's how he found her dead. And she comes on the couch and is like, "Oh, big bro, haven't you figured it out yet?" That sort of thing. Amanda Seyfried, you are precious. My God, you were so good here. So good here. The relationship that Veronica has with Keith, her dad, is wonderful. It's a wonderful representation of a single father. I love it so much. Veronica has to know how to protect herself in the post 9/11, post Columbine world. We all do. Because you can't trust anyone. No one is trustworthy. Everyone is a walking trope, a walking pessimistic crime narrative. That's Everyone. We occupy this same sort of nihilistic framework, and you have to be so careful around nihilistic types. But when you're in a seemingly nihilistic narrative, it's very difficult to break away from that sort of meta narrative. Postmodernism can only help you so much. It's the fire of creativity and of the individual of Veronica that truly separates her from nihilism directly, because she believes. She believes in a few things, but a few very powerful ones. Those things that she can't help but believe in, they make her who she is. She believes in justice, she believes in revenge, and she believes in affection. And she believes in herself. And I believe in Veronica Mars as well. I think these episodes are wonderfully designed, great structured in nearly every single episode. Uh, Rob Thomas, the creator of Veronica Mars, I have so much respect for. I also love Party Down, so if you're gonna leave in the comments, you should watch Party Down. Trust me, I've watched it like 50 fucking times. It's hilarious. I love seeing a lot of crossover between the two shows. And Rob Thomas is certainly like a writer just full of good humor. Like the show is very, very, very effortlessly funny and very witty, very like acerbic, very, very articulate. It has one of my favorite jokes of all time when Principal Clemens goes up to Logan while he's at his locker and he's like, "Mr. Eccles, a word, please. Mr. Eccles, may I have a word?" Anthropomorphic. All yours, big guy. That is so good, dude. That's so good. So funny. Logan Eccles is one of the best written characters I've ever had the privilege to experience and see in motion. My God, he's so good. Aaron Eccles is the big bad of this season. So I hope you've taken what a lot of what I've said about demented, psychopathic, and cruel authority figures of celebrity. Apply that directly to Aaron. I'm talking about the big bad. He murdered Lily. He fucked his son's girlfriend, recorded it, and then bashed her brains in. That's the kind of world we're looking at with Veronica Mars. Our parents have let us down so much. Our leaders have let us down so much. The youth in the mid 2000s couldn't believe in anyone. Under a Bush presidency, you think anyone has faith in democracy or in politics? Absolutely not. Experiencing and enduring the aftershocks of both Columbine and 9/11, you think anyone believes in fucking anything anymore? And none of it's our fault. None of it was the fault of teenagers in the mid 2000s. None of it was theirs, but it seems like they're the ones who have to experience the most punishment. They're the afterthoughts. They're half considered. No one remembers them. And what happens when you grow up in a world where the morality of it is just kind of despicable and gross? It creates a whole generation of kids who want to die. A whole generation of kids who feel like they're already dead. I'm one of them. Season one of Veronica Mars extraordinarily powerful. I think it's wonderfully structured. The few flaws within it feel like the worst kinds of studio notes possible that I'm sure Rob Thomas had to agree with. I'm sure there's so much compromise involved with these kinds of long television shows, or these 22 episode seasons kind of television shows. I'm sure there's a lot of studio involvement. And I think that the sign of a great showrunner is the ability to work with and around studio interference. And I think that Rob Thomas did that to the best of his abilities here. The few flaws within it feel like they were shoehorned in by an outside creative element. So I can see where Rob Thomas's vision was for this show, and I think he perfectly captured it, all things considered. But I think he really reaches the peak of his genius, and Veronica Mars is at its most powerful in the next season, season 2, which we will cover next week. Aaron Eccles recorded himself fucking defiling, corrupting the American teen dream in its most idealized form for posterity so he could pleasure himself to the betrayal of youth culture later. And then he murdered that symbol of perfect blonde teen dream. And he almost got away with it too. And he didn't care who he hurt in the process. He broke his son's heart. He broke the spirit of the American teenager, bludgeoned it over the head with a fucking ashtray. A long time ago, we used to be friends, but I haven't thought of you lately at all. That's not true. I think about you every day because I'm your cult boyfriend, and I'm gonna have a lot of fun talking about season two of Veronica Mars today with you all. Um, Season two is my favorite season of Veronica Mars. I think it's masterful. I think it's incredible. Let's be honest. I'm going to spend most of this video, probably almost all of this video, analyzing evil. I'm dedicating most of this video to Beaver Casablancas, to the big bad, to the primary antagonist of season two. And I would argue Veronica Mars's arch nemesis, or at least the greatest villain she ever faced. And I think the best villain um, ever made by Rob Thomas, one of the best villains ever. And I would have to say, maybe ironically, in a poetic way, um, one of the most overlooked and underappreciated villains of all time. Cassidy Casablancas, I guess it's fitting that even in death, he's never really viewed or respected or understood as as a really powerful force of psychopathic dread. First of all, Kyle Gallner, his performance was excellent. Kyle Gallner went above and beyond and crafted a character that is just so intensely insecure that it has become weaponized. He created a character that is so psychotic and so desperate that I will never forget Cassidy Casablanca. So Kyle Gallner, you fucking rule. You are incredible on the second season of Veronica Mars. Wow. Wow. Always astonished. Certain like I will never get how scared and desperate and defeated Kyle Gallner looks and sounds when he goes, "My name is Cassidy," at the end of his arc, at the end of his life. Cassidy Casablancas. Within Cassidy, we are able to investigate and explore. So I want you to see the notes. You ain't allowed to see the notes. It's behind the scenes stuff. You're supposed to think I'm really smart. Actually, it's like three sentences. I should come more prepared, but I have a lot of confidence in myself. Where was I? Within Cassidy Casablancas, we are able to investigate the dark side of the postmodern brat. I talk about postmodern brats a lot. Cassidy Casablancas is definitely one of them. He's in good company. And it's not exclusive to villains, it's not exclusive to antagonistic forces. Not only would Nancy Downs from The Craft be in this grouping, but so would Lucas Scott from One Tree Hill, so would Pacey Witter from Dawson's Creek, then again, so would Mickey Altieri from Scream 2. It's a place where people challenge meta narratives. It's a place where people reject narratives. It's a place where people act out against a world that seems entirely unfair because it is entirely unfair. It's a group of kids who are weaponized by years and years of being abused by those in power. it comes from a place of rebellion and often a place of a dreadful amount of insecurity. Cassidy Casablancas is, I think, one of the most fascinating characters that I've ever engaged with, and I think it's perfectly written and conceived of by Rob Thomas and the other writers on Veronica Mars, that not every question is answered, and you wish you had more time with Cassidy. I love that there is something always mysterious about him, like how he got this psychotic. But if you pay attention, you will understand how he was weaponized to such a helpless extent. Veronica Mars season 2 centers around an explosion. A bus is full of these kids on a field trip back from a baseball stadium where they meet Woody Goodman. They meet Woody Goodman's daughter Gia. They meet some professional baseball players, and on the way back, a bomb goes off on the bus, taking out the driver, and the bomb goes off right when they're about to turn around a cliff. And of course, since the driver's dead, the bus goes over the cliff. Everyone on the bus dies. Um, the bus is full of your average teenager, while the limo behind them is full of the rich O-Niners who didn't have to ride the bus. This gives way to a lot of really interesting episodes of the show. I think that I Am God is a phenomenal episode, maybe one of the best Veronica Mars episodes structurally and creatively, where Veronica Mars has these hallucinations and dreams of each of the different people on the bus who died, and she's uncovering certain clues through talking to their ghosts, so to speak. And I mean, this season is structured beautifully because a lot of the time Veronica is dealing with an impact left by one of the deceased classmates, and the image becomes more and more clear when you realize that most of the students on that bus, or at least three or four of them, were all on the same little league team together, who Woody Goodman coached and operated. And Woody Goodman is a vile creep. He's a pedophile. He's a pedophile with an awful lot of power. He is basically running Neptune. And he abused these kids and probably has continued to abuse many, many other ones. And these kids were going to come forward for the outing of the century. They were going to destroy Woody's reputation. That was until they were all killed on the bus. There was another person on that baseball team. There was another person on the Little League team. So undervalued, so seemingly unimportant that the pictures that exist of the roster, of the lineup, of the team, he's not pictured. His name's Cassidy Casablancas. Cassidy is suffering from that trauma for the entire season, for his entire life, right? Um, it was such a traumatic sexual experience that he got chlamydia from it. And I think that the idea of sex completely triggers something deep and homicidal, suicidal inside of him. Um, he has a relationship with Mac this season, the computer whiz, who I love. She's a great character. And aesthetically, Kyle Gallner and Tina Majorino, I think is how you say her name, they look amazing together. And he's incredibly abusive towards her because he's so fucking insecure and weird. I don't buy the theory that he's gay, mostly because I think that even if he was in a gay relationship, he still wouldn't be able to engage in sexual activity with any partner. I don't think it has to do with gender. I think what it has to do with is his first exposure to sexuality um, traumatized him for life. And the thing that is tearing him up inside is that his brother, of course, is Dick Casablancas, who is the epitome of toxic masculinity. So when Beaver has all of these crazy feelings when it comes to sex, and maybe he is struggling with his sexuality. But the important part of it, the part that is truly horrific, is that he feels like he's always having to prove his masculinity, especially living in the shadow of his brother. This guy who constantly taunts him for being a nerd, or for acting gay, or for just being inept socially and insecure emotionally. And he's always trying to prove himself. I mean, he goes the distance to prove his masculinity when he actually does rape Veronica at Shelley Pomeroy's party, the subject of the trip to the dentist episode of the first season, where Beaver denies it then. Beaver definitely did rape Veronica Mars. And she has that line of, well, I was unconscious, so I guess you could have imagined I was anything you wanted me to be, to, like, in order for you to get it up, because Mac told her about the problems that she was having with her relationship with Cassidy. Trauma can weaponize someone. Absolutely. And if you want to say that he's battling with his sexuality, I think he's battling with his gender identity as well, then. He's constantly made fun of for being effeminate. He's infantilized, so he's never truly a man. He's like a boy. It's like Beaver. He's a beaver. Beaver, which could be a euphemism for, for those female naughty parts, but also it's an infantilizing word. So, like, the thing that people call him most when they see him is something that immediately triggers a response of sexual, like, deep sexual insecurity, because it is a euphemism for pussy. Um, but it's also an infantilized version of that euphemism. That's why he's so quick to correct people that his name is Cassidy, that he is a man. And he also wants to kind of remove that sexualized ribbing from his namesake. Um, his father doesn't bring him to the shooting range. His father doesn't do anything with him. He does things with Dick all the time. His mother doesn't want anything to do with her family at all. She rebuffs his request to live with her after his father is arrested for playing the real estate market. Cassidy Casablancas is unseen, not pictured in the grand scheme of things, and yet he's a future business leader of America, right? Veronica Mars season 2 forced me to learn about incorporation. That's the only thing that's on this piece of paper right here. Because fuck you, Rob Thomas. It's beautiful, and I'll explain why it's beautiful, but at first you're like, what? I have to learn about incorporation? Like with a city? Um, thank God that we have that economics teacher who uses Palo Alto as an example of the dark side of incorporation, which effectively puts up a wall between economic classes, resulting in an ultra rich center surrounded by the crime capital of America. Cassidy Casablancas starts his own real estate company, Phoenix. Symbol should be pretty evident. He bets against incorporation, which is Woody Goodman's new fetishistic pet project when it comes to playing with the city of Neptune. Woody Goodman fetishizes class and social stratification. And Cassidy bets against that and nets like over $8 million. Cassidy Casablancas was a genius. Cassidy Casablancas was a psychotic. Trauma can weaponize you. So let's say that Cassidy is traumatized at a very early age with his first exposure to sexuality being the most grim and abusive one you could possibly imagine. We see Woody Goodman. We see him in interactions with his own son. Woody Goodman is a complete monster. He's a monster. Steve Gutenberg, you did amazing here. He's a complete monster. So that's trauma. So that's when Cassidy experiences trauma. And he's brought up in this ultra rich, hyper privileged world where he's not recognized, where he's not good enough for anything. And it's a constant series of weaponizations. He's being weaponized every single time he is called Beaver. He's being weaponized every single time he sees Woody Goodman, which is all the time because he's a public figure. The people who built your worlds, the people who are bringing up your kids, the people you trust your kids to, those ultra rich, like peons of virtue, those are the ones who are destroying them. Your future business leaders of America, they're psychopaths. And they're psychopaths because you made them that way. Now, Cassidy was probably always psychotic. And what happens when you traumatize a psychopath? You weaponize that psychopath. There's a brilliant moment where Cassidy humiliates Dick, and then Dick assaults Cassidy and is about to punch him in the face, where Cassidy is like, "Oh, no, no, no. You will suffer way worse if you hit me. Trust me. Remember Sally?" We're never told what exactly Sally is. You have to research what Rob Thomas has to say about it because he's been asked and he's like, I think it's possibly alluding to a pet, like a dog or a cat or something that the Casablancas used to have that Beaver made disappear. We're talking about what he did when he was a kid. We're talking about psychopathic tendencies already evident possibly before the trauma. Some of these kids are mentally ill, and if you put them in a postmodern wasteland of hyper juxtaposed and contrasted slums and mansions, he's going to grow up to be a very weaponized, sadistic genius. I think the best scene in Veronica Mars is Cassidy's final scene where he has truly revealed himself to Veronica on the roof of the Neptune Grand, where Veronica pieces it all together for us. He's got her at gunpoint. He tries to kill her father, blows up Woody's plane. Yeah, okay, so like Cassidy's plan is enormous and it's intricate, it's vast, and it's unmerciful. He blows up the school bus because of the kids who are going to come forward. And Beaver is so ridiculously insecure and traumatized and ashamed of being abused by Woody Goodman that he would rather murder the kids on the bus than have them come forward. But he uses that situation to blackmail Woody and expose him for actually being an abuser, and then blow up his airplane after Keith Mars had found him in hiding and brought him back to stand trial. He kills Woody Goodman, and he bets against Woody Goodman's fetishistic new economic idea of incorporating Neptune, basically codifying the intense class disparity, social stratification into law where the rich get richer. He bet against that and he won. It's a total and complete humiliation and deconstruction and destruction of his abuser, of Woody Goodman. He wants to go after everyone who punished and weaponized him. He knew that his father was a criminal. And he exposed him through Veronica, through making Veronica believe that she was actually seeing if Kendall was having an affair. He knew that. He knew that. He just knew that Veronica would expose his father Richard's own illegal foundations of his real estate empire, punishing his father for never viewing him as a man. And he's up on that rooftop, and his voice is still cracking, and he's still wavering, and he's still insecure. He never feels comfortable in his body for even a moment. Logan runs up there and saves Veronica's life. Cassidy creeps over to the ledge, and this is the best moment. It's one of the best moments ever in television, but certainly teen drama. Logan says, "Don't. Beaver, don't." He turns and says, "My name is Cassidy." Cassidy, don't. Why not? And you see the look on Logan's face, trying to think of just one reason why this kid shouldn't kill himself. And he can't. That's what I thought. And then with a look of grim resolve, he jumps back off the balcony and kills himself. That is a heartbreaking moment because of how truthful it is. He was a postmodern brat because he destroyed the architects of Neptune. He targeted them as he was targeted, as he was made to feel abused, made to feel feminine, made to feel like he wasn't a man, like he was inept, like he was lacking. And that destroyed him on the inside and weaponized him so deeply that he tried to not only reject Neptune's narrative of wealth, but deconstruct it, redefine it, repurpose it, and use that new sincerity that he was trying to find through manipulation and reevaluate his own concept of masculinity, which would come from being recognized as powerful. And the only way that the grammar within Neptune's narrative that he was deconstructing and breaking apart and manipulating, and the only way that that grammar could properly articulate. If he wasn't masculine in Neptune's eyes as it stood, well, he would reorganize the language that Neptune used until he would be viewed as masculine, until he would be viewed as valuable. It's just mind blowing because we don't have an innocent Beaver ever. The first time he shows up in the Mad episode of season 1, he's already raped Veronica at that point. He'd already been weaponized and abused. And the bus goes off the cliff in the very first episode of season 2. So we never see an innocent Beaver. Beaver is always thinking, he's always planning. He is Moriarty for my generation. He is I think he's a perfect nemesis for Veronica because Veronica looks at the same problems. She doesn't experience the same sorts of well, actually, she kind of does experience the same trauma, right? And it's a trauma that Beaver is inflicting upon her. It's a sexual trauma. He raped her, and he's punishing Neptune as a whole for making it because of how empty it made him feel, how without definition he felt as a man, as a thing with a future. I mean, he destroyed Veronica. He hurt her so bad. He was ultimately just barely, he just barely got caught. Veronica will always be stronger than Beaver Casablancas. Veronica will always be more healthy than Cassidy Casablancas. Veronica Mars will always be my hero. But there's a deep tragedy to Cassidy Casablancas, and it's the tragedy of never truly getting to his interiority. Because, like, I imagine the inside of this kid, the emotional underbelly of Cassidy is just a ball of nerves. It's just electric shocks and currents, right? It's extremely dangerous and hazardous to peer inside of this kid's psychology because it's not only so dark, it's so insecure, it's so unsure of itself. It keeps moving and trying to incorporate all these different themes that he's accustomed to, all these different character traits that his brother possesses that he certainly lacks. He is a psychotic, he's a psychopath, and he's unavoidable, you know, because I think he was a psychopath before Woody abused him when he was a kid. I think he was already killing pets and stuff. Remember Sally? He had what most people would generally consider a perfect life. He was heir to a majestic throne of business, of class, of wealth. But I think he was psychotic and he was unavoidable. And he had a great education. He had great mentors, even if those mentors didn't view him as such. I mean, he learned how to be sadistic from the best. He learned from his father and he learned from Woody Goodman. He learned how to be sadistic by the most sadistic people in his life, and those were two father figures who abused him, one emotionally and the other sexually and physically. And Beaver certainly punished his own architects of his insecurity. He punished the architects of Neptune, who in his eyes were also the founders of his flaws, the things that made him so weaponized and insecure and hurt. He found those people out and he punished them on a grand scale, and he did it all before graduating high school. He's the dark side of the postmodern brat. Because he tried to deconstruct, he tried to be this weaponized wrecking ball inside of an incredibly strict and rigid social sphere like Neptune. They had a dark element to him that was unfathomable. He had something that was so demented, ingrained, beaten into his character. His treachery was just simply unavoidable. And you couldn't see it coming because you never saw him to begin with. Not as a true threat, not as anything with a definition other than beaver, pussy. And even after all that, Cassidy jumps to his death from the roof of the Neptune Grand, which is so colorful, which is so, I mean, like, symbolically, poetically colorful. I love the setting of the top of the Neptune Grand because it's as if like a literal metaphor for how Cassidy ascended the ladder of success in Neptune so effortlessly and so easily. And he's on that rooftop. It's about a kid who kills himself by jumping off of the highest rung on the socioeconomic ladder. It's about the psychopathy of financial success. It's about how weaponization, trauma, those go hand in hand. And it's about the psychopathic limits of sexual insecurity. Cassidy Casablancas haunts my dreams. Probably the best villain I've ever seen. He and Nancy Downs. Forever. Nancy was right in the craft, but Cassidy couldn't have been more wrong. And he also couldn't have been more insecure or more psychotic. Brilliant performance. Astonishingly mesmerizing and um, depressing and like life affecting character. Because I love analyzing with these characters and with these shows, and I go really deep into it. I attach emotionally, like very deeply, because that's how I can understand. That's how I understand the best. But there are certain characters that like a Nietzschean abyss, right? You gaze into it for a while, and the abyss stares back into you. There are some places that are too dark to examine, and Cassidy Casablancas is always in an extremely dark place. He's one of the darkest of all the dark places, and when I engage and interact with Cassidy, I can feel his peculiar brand of wealthy weaponization staring back into me, kind of ridiculing my theory of the postmodern brat. You want to celebrate postmodern rejection, your cult boyfriend? Well, no one rejected it more thoroughly, more finally, or more grotesquely than Cassidy Casablancas. Maybe, maybe the postmodern brat is the greatest villain of all. Otherwise, this season is just wonderful. Veronica Mars is delightful. There's so many funny bits in here. Veronica Mars has accused me of evil. We get great lines in it. You get some really good Logan and Veronica moments, making them like one of the best couples ever. I love them together. I thought our story was epic. You and me, spanning years and continents, lives ruined, bloodshed. Epic. Yeah, that moment hits me hard, and I think it hits the entire Veronica Mars fandom the same amount. Great moment. Great stuff. Charisma Carpenter playing Kendall Casablancas. I'm a huge Buffy fan. I love seeing Charisma Carpenter. Hot as fuck forever. Queen forever. Great performance. Tessa Thompson's in this season, and she's mostly bad. I've seen a lot of people say that like the Jackie character is just poorly developed, but it's not. It's a full character. She's just bad at portraying it. I'm kind of unforgiving when it comes to that because I'm sick of seeing that like Jackie was just underdeveloped, but she wasn't. She was fully fleshed out and given so many opportunities to shine that Tessa Thompson wastes entirely. She's cool seeing. She's really cute. She has a decent amount of like emotive expression, but she's like inherently unlikable on screen here, and I don't know why. I normally like her as an actor, but here she squandered every opportunity she was handed over. Wallace went through a lot with his dad, with Jackie. Wallace is always great. I always love Wallace. I'll probably never have anything bad to say about Wallace or Mac. I think that Veronica's like core friend group. I think they're extraordinary, and I love hanging out with them. Duncan has the whole Meg and the baby thing. Meg was on that bus, by the way. But Meg and the baby and going to Mexico and like Clarence Weedman kills Aaron Eccles who gets out of jail. It's a whole bunch of shit. I'm just glad we're rid of Duncan forever now because He sucked as a character, and it's nice seeing Aaron Eccles get shot. And I do like the cheeky ways that Rob Thomas communicates with fans. This was like during the last of UPN's run as a channel, I think, right? Probably. And no one really knew what was going to happen with the show. The fate of the show was hung in balance, like it always has. It's terrible being a fan of Veronica Mars because it's always going away, but then it's always coming back by a miracle, by an act of some sardonic postmodern god. We always get it back. I still don't think we're done with Veronica Mars. I think we're going to be seeing Kristen Bell as a private eye again. But when Clarence Weedman kills Aaron Eccles, he calls Duncan, and Duncan answers with CW, to which Clarence says it's a done deal. And I think it's been confirmed that was Rob Thomas communicating with the fans of the show who are watching this on UPN that Veronica Mars is confirmed to be picked up by the CW for a third season. Cheeky, fun, and then serves the plot perfectly. Like, good job, man. Rob Thomas, I think, outdid himself this season when it comes to structure, when it comes to power, when it comes to emotion, when it comes to romance, and then when it comes to the most demented qualities like Cassidy Casablancas and Woody Goodman. Gia, oh my God, Kristen Ritter, just like marry me, Kristen Ritter, or just marry me, Gia. I like her a lot. I think she's really funny and silly and goofy and sexy. I love Gia. She's great. At least we'll be talking about Gia again when we get to the film. So I think I will like hyperanalyze Gia, but I'll wait for the movie because she actually is a true character there. She gets fleshed out a lot more and has some more meaningful confrontations and interactions with Veronica in the film. In this season, she's like like a red herring, she's a bimbo, she's silly, she's up in the air. You never know what to make of her. I just want to make out with her. I don't know. I love Kristen Ritter on this show, and yeah, expect a lot of Gia analysis when I get to the film. But for now, really fun, really funny, really cute character that I really enjoyed hanging out with a lot. And who else? Oh yes, the PCHers. Weevil, really cool. It's just really cool. He's going through his gang stuff. I guess he gets arrested before graduation. Fuck you, Sheriff Lamb, who had one amazing moment on this show, didn't he? And it was in this season where Meg's sister's being hidden in a closet, and he goes back in there, and it's like, my father told me the same thing. There's so much interiority there, and the way the show ends with him in his car, like, do you imagine him like in perpetuity, like just staring at the house, waiting for a moment to punch Meg's father in the face while pretending it's his own dad? Like, great Sheriff Lamb moment. Love it. Great Sheriff Lamb moment. Keith Mars gets to fool around with his old co-star from Just Shoot Me, who is smoking like forever. That was cool. That was fun. Good energy. Great performance again. The dynamic between Veronica and her father is just simply a great representation of single dad with a daughter. It's wonderful. It's like really heartwarming all the time. It's probably the most consistently heartfelt quality of the show is the father-daughter dynamic between Keith and Veronica. I think that the mysteries in this season, like the self-contained bottle mysteries, are a lot more engaging and exciting, funnier with unexpected turns. I think that more of them inform the overall narrative because several of them do have to do specifically with a casualty of the bus crash, which help paint this overall picture of postmodern rejection and how damaging and terrible it can be. Because this is Cassidy's postmodern rejection of Neptune's narrative writ large. And my God, it's thrilling and scary. Like petrifying. I'm horrified by Cassidy Casablancas. I'm horrified by this kid because like actually engaging with Cassidy is like super dangerous to me philosophically. Incredible villain. I loved Cassidy Casablanca so much. Once again, mad respect to Kyle Gallner. You pulled it off. You were so good here. And to my knowledge, like Rob Thomas And I think most of the head writers knew that Cassidy was going to be the big bad of season two. But I don't believe Kyle Gallner knew until they were getting ready to film the finale. So it had so much more to his characterization because there's this Cassidy is always cripplingly self-aware, but it's interesting to think that the actor who portrayed him wasn't even aware of the of his true identity, of his true demented persona. But it just feels so clear when you rewatch it. Like he's always so he could never be possessed by a moment, you know? He he's never comfortable in his own skin. He's never comfortable in the moment. He's never gotten to live. Not truthfully. I don't think he's ever felt alive, and I also don't think Cassidy Casablancas ever wanted to be alive. I think he knew he was deluding himself by with the Phoenix Land Trust just getting so much money and reaching the top of that economic ladder. I think he was deluding himself into thinking that his life could have had a purpose because he knew it never could have a purpose, and I knew it never could have a purpose, and no one could even give him one good reason not to kill himself after they knew all the things that he had done. Cassidy Casablancas was always better off dead, and that's the most tragic component of how sophisticated his treatment was as a villain, as the primary antagonist of Veronica Mars season two. The most tragic part is that the world would have been better off if Cassidy Casablancas had never existed. That statement is the most weaponizing thing that a postmodern brat could truly know about oneself. Fuck, dude. Like, I'm damaged now from actually having to, with laser focus, figure out what's going on with Cassidy. I know what's going on with Cassidy, and I wish I didn't. Because it's some interacting with Cassidy Casablancas brings you to some seriously troubling places. I don't blame him for killing himself at all. I'm surprised he didn't do it earlier. And I think he's surprised too that he made it this long. He made it long enough to inflict some real pain and punishment. And ultimately, he knew he was the one who should have been punished most of all. It's the best Veronica Mars villain by far. And Cassidy is a character who will always stick with me, whether I want him to or not. I think that's all I can say. Thank you for watching, as always. I'm your cult boyfriend, talking to you about season 3 of Veronica Mars today. Where to start? Where to start? Analyzing Veronica Mars has been kind of different or weird for me because I find that I tend to hyper focus on single arcs. You know, like in season 2 in that video, I was really into talking about Cassidy Casablancas for 40 minutes and then everybody else for the remaining 3, you know? Like I spend most of my time devoted to one character. Um, that's just the way that Veronica Mars hits me. You know, it hits everyone differently. All shows hit different people differently. When I was covering One Tree Hill, I was mainly devoted to Lucas, Dan, and Peyton. When I did the OC, well, the OC was a bit easier to talk about everybody because they were like super connected, and um, the OC is an outlier, as an outsider in this analytical bubble. But with Veronica Mars and like One Tree Hill, I tend to focus on the characters that I think were best expressed in that particular season, which also can inform you that just because I haven't spent a lot of time on a certain character, like Logan, for instance, I love Logan. Haven't spent a whole lot of time on Logan because I'm kind of waiting to, because there's so many things to say about his character that I don't think are fully expressed until later seasons and later media. I think that starting with the film, I'll have a lot more to say about Logan, but certainly in the season 4 analysis video, I'll have a hell of a lot to say about Logan and Veronica and that relationship, because that's where I think that their relationship is fully explored and deconstructed and analyzed and challenged in some really irreversible ways, right? Like in season 2, I spent most of my time on Cassidy because that was his time to shine. That was his highlight. That was the magnifying glass over his demented psychology, and I went for it. And by the way, that video fucked me up. Like, being around Cassidy Casablancas for that long, and that like intimately, uh, I hope you enjoyed that insight, because my season 2 analysis video of Veronica Mars almost drove me insane. You know, it took a little while to bounce back from getting really close to Cassidy, like I did for that video. This video is less intense, right? This season is less intense. This season isn't very good. It's not bad, not by any means. It suffers from the same problem that a lot of shows suffer from. A lot of teen dramas suffer from this. Everything's great in high school, and then when you move to college, things are a bit different. And if you've watched my other analysis videos where they try to make this transition from high school to college, then you'll already know what I'm about to say. So I won't drone on too long about this point, but I'll just kind of provide you with the basics of my criticisms of college teen drama. High school is this like the great equalizer for writers in a lot of ways, because you can have a super privileged, extremely rich individual like Logan Eccles sitting right next to a future career criminal like Weevil. Like, those two are forced to inhabit the same spaces, and it's a much more confrontational dynamic, and it's one that's not voluntary. Like, you have to go to high school, you have to go to school. Um, but that adds for a lot more. It gives you quite a few chances to do a lot of postmodern studies into these kind of character dynamics, especially when you're dealing with class or social stratification, which Veronica Mars was. And One Tree Hill did the same thing, but One Tree Hill infamously did a time jump and skipped high school, or I'm sorry, skipped college altogether. Veronica Mars decided to bite the bullet, like Dawson's Creek or Buffy the Vampire Slayer did, and tried to go to college. And just like Buffy and Dawson's Creek, it stumbled a bit because you don't have the same sort of fruitful, complicated, effortless like playing field that high school offers these tales of class and of like youthful hysterical struggles. It College doesn't offer those same kinds of situations. College is also far more nihilistic and cynical than high school is. Films like Gossip definitely get this point across pretty well. Veronica Mars is definitely a pretty cynical show. So that's why its transition to college isn't as like universe rattling, isn't as upsetting as like Dawson's Creek transition to college, which really took a few trips. They tripped and stumbled all through their final 2 seasons, and Buffy didn't fare too much better either. In fact, the best parts of season 4, the college season of Buffy, the best episodes are the Faith ones, you know. But that's almost because those episodes don't really have anything to do with college. I'll be covering Buffy in the future, so don't worry, I'll go into season 4 there. But Veronica Mars is this cynical look at the postmodern teen mindset post Columbine and post 9/11. And you can translate that into a college setting. It just works a lot better in a high school one. I like that like Weevil and Logan aren't sharing they're sharing the same space in high school because they go to the same school. I don't like that Logan and Weevil now occupy the same space because Weevil cleans his toilets. Like it doesn't work as well. It really doesn't. Leaves a sour taste in the mouth. Um, Now that does sound a bit cynical, but it also is much more contrived. But Veronica Mars being cynical, there are certain themes in the third season that are interestingly developed. Firstly, it's a theme that has been constant. Veronica Mars, this teenage private eye, right? Seeking retribution and justice. What does justice mean to teenagers who have come into maturity, who are coming of age in a world that feels random, unpredictable, and unforgiving, and full of violence and nihilism? Like, what does justice mean? Well, justice means payback. You get tough, you get even. And I think the best episode of season 3 is probably the final one, The Bitch is Back, which revenge as payback is I think fully realized in that episode. That's the one where Veronica makes a secret society pay for exposing Veronica on a sex tape, which goes hand in hand with the other theme that's constant through Veronica Mars that is really fascinating as well, which is that of privacy. What does privacy mean to kids? We're all really sensitive, but we're terribly insecure, and I don't just mean that emotionally. I mean, um, we're not as guarded, as protected as we'd like to be, but nothing surprises us anymore. Not really. Veronica Mars spends most of her time exposing the secrets of Neptune, California, prying into people's lives, digging around, spying on them, and revealing them to the world. And that is a part of justice. That is payback, which is exposure. But when it happens to Veronica, clearly it's a crime. Clearly it's something that's unforgivable and distasteful, and payback is needed. It's really interesting when we try to view the character of Veronica into these different parts, where for someone who attacks privacy as the major weak point on all of her foes, on all of her enemies and antagonists, uh, she is such a sensitive person. She likes to act extremely tough, but she's just as sensitive to everyone else, and her privacy is just as easy to penetrate, just as easily penetrated as anyone else. And she could be the victim just as easily as she could be the hero. But that's the thing about Veronica Mars. You can't victimize her. She doesn't believe in that mentality. She gets tough and she gets even. But privacy is always an interesting concept inside of Veronica Mars, especially when you consider post Columbine, post 9/11, and some of the things that Veronica is doing do seem to give way in a cheeky, cynical format to wiretaps, to governments spying on their citizens, to the privacy that we were losing as a culture, as a nation in this exact time period. Uh, it gets into some murky waters there, but Veronica, this is a deeply sophisticated character, and she's such a sensitive hero. She's my hero, honestly, but um, I think her primary flaw is being found out, and what she's best at is finding others out. You know, her primary weakness, like the thing she's afraid of most, is losing her privacy, and the thing she thrives upon is attacking others' privacy. It's interesting. If I were to hyper focus on one character this season, well, first of all, let me get this out of the way. Not a whole lot of characters had a lot to do this season that I think was interesting. This season has a lot of problems. Its major problem is one of structure and focus. Several of these problems, like the biggest ones, do feel like network notes, like studio notes, and that sucks. You know, Veronica Mars got canceled after this season. Um, but luckily, the fans, the Veronica Mars marshmallows are the best people in the universe because they brought her back to life a few times. But it was canceled after this season, and everyone thought it was the end, but luckily, Tinkerbell always comes back to life, right? But I feel like it has to be a network decision to have this strange structure with this complete weird focus. I would say lack of focus, but I do feel like it's focused. It's just it's muddled. It's unclear. There is a focus, um, only because the first two seasons, the structure, the pacing, the focus was perfectly done. You had your overall narrative, your overall mystery: who killed Lily Kane, who blew up the bus, you know, who's the mad cheerleader killer, and who's the mad bomber. You know, you had your Aaron Eccles and Cassidy Casablanca's big bads. Uh, and why season two is my favorite season is because there would be these bottle episodes, right, where there would be a contained mystery to a single episode while paying service to forward the overarching narrative. Um, in the first season, those kind of bottled problems didn't exactly speak to the overall mystery, but in season two, and that's why it's the best one, half the time she'd be investigating certain kids that died on that bus, and kind of it would help to develop our image of these kids on this bus. And really, we would, as an audience, we would devote more of our own time away from the show, kind of trying to figure out who did it, and really feel for the kids a lot more, you know? But the point is, the focus and the structure was perfect, and it peaked when it was supposed to peak. It hit everything. It was so fucking good. Some of the best structural decisions I've ever seen are in Veronica Mars season two, and Veronica Mars season one is also excellently structured, and the focus is there. The focus is on Lily Kane for season one and on the bus for season two. The focus, it never wavers. It never even seems unsure of itself, even when the plot is sending you down a back alley in a wrong way, dead end fucking road of a mystery, just to bring you back. Like, it was really well structured. This season, there are too many things going on. Uh, None of the villains are well developed, and I wish I didn't say like a pluralized version of villain, because they should have picked one. They have multiple different big mysteries going on that get solved really, really fast without giving us enough time to really think about it. And it doesn't feel as complicated as the previous Veronica Mars big mysteries, and yet they somehow feel more convoluted. You know, I'm not invested in Mercer at all. Mercer is like the first one. He is the campus rapist. Mercer sucks. I mean, Mercer is kind of the best developed out of all the villains here, but like in the third season, but I fucking he's empty, he's weak. And if you didn't know he was the rapist when they dressed him up as Alex Delarge from Clockwork Orange, I don't know what to tell you. It couldn't have been more obvious. But also his mystery, his story, them her finding him out couldn't have been more contrived and convoluted. And then, like it was solved so fast, you know? I thought that was going to be our overall narrative for the whole season. And maybe it would have been cool if they had done something differently, but it feels like a network was like, no, wrap that up. People aren't responding to that. Start a different one. So they started a Tim Foyle fucking bullshit murder thing. And I hate Tim Foyle. It was cool to see the same actor that played Lucky in the second season come back to play Tim in this one. But that's another big bad that happens immediately after the rapist thing is figured out, and that gets solved. And when Tim Foyle gets solved, there's nothing. They forget to start something. They forget to start a new mystery, or they just like the focus. Like, I can't say it's not there because it's there. Maybe it's dedicated to this like notion of privacy that I'm talking about, because that's what the whole finale is devoted to, exploring this like this very hypocritical and very sensitive and hurt part of Veronica that deals with her sexual privacy. That's a fascinating thing to go into, but Veronica Mars, What the fuck? There are too many big stories going on. Why do you have so many fucking stories going on? And why do both of the big mysteries that feel like they're supposed to last the whole season only last like 7 episodes each? And why are the big bads so terrible? Why does Tinfoil and Mercer, why do they suck so much? They're not interesting. I loved Cassidy Casablancas. Beeve, my bro, dude. I loved Cassidy. Fucking sick in the head, but I could get lost in that character's psychology, dude. Like, he was amazing. And Aaron Eccles was an excellent first villain. Oh my god, he was great in the first season. My lord. And you did so well with those characters. I was keeping it so unexpected, yet seemingly fair. But I know it's unfair because we're pulling from noir, which makes it such a cynical kind of show, and I love you for that. Season 3, though, why? Just fucking why? Why fumble the ball twice in a row and then just forget that you're playing a game, like a mystery? You introduced two pretty big things. It would have been cool if they connected at all. You introduced two pretty big mysteries. You solved them both by the middle of the season, and then you forgot. You forgot to do something else. And we're just hanging out, I guess, after that, solving like little mysteries here and there. Wow, like that's why I don't think this is like the fault of Rob Thomas, because if the first two seasons taught us anything, is that he definitely knows how to structure a season of television, a series of teen drama, private investigator mystery. Like he knows how to do that. And this feels like the CW as a network in its early age, just acquiring Veronica Mars, being like, "Oh no, this isn't working. We don't like that. Okay, wrap that up quick. Start this other one. Oh, that didn't work either. Wrap that up. Just focus on the romance. That's what people seem to talk about. They seem to talk about Team Piz or Team Logan. Do that." And it's like, fuck, you you just killed yourself, show. Man, that sucks. And so in a lot of ways, there are so many arcs that don't feel complete because this doesn't feel like a fully considered season. It feels like perhaps Rob Thomas had an idea of something different, and this is what we got instead, which is, fine. In the long run, it's fine because I don't even hate this season. I have fun with these characters, I just mentioned Piz. He's a new character who I like. I like Piz, but he's no Logan. But then again, Logan's no Logan this season. They fucking cut his balls off, dude. But I'm gonna have to go into Logan in season 4 because it plays into it. Like Veronica is far more attracted to Logan when he is being extremely violent and toxic, and he finds that out later on. Um, and in this season, he's definitely like super sensitive and trying to behave himself extremely well, and it works against his character. Although one of my favorite episodes, I think, well, not episodes, one of my favorite parts of the entire series is the few scenes that he shares with a little girl whose older sister was like off in Vegas, like doing God knows what with Dick Casablancas, and they left the little girl there with him. And it was when he was going through a breakup with Veronica, and they form a really cool bond, and that's really cool. Seeing Jason Doring in that episode is just marvelous stuff, dude. Fucking loved it. It opened up a lot of ideas and all new sensitive regions for the character of Logan Eccles. That's pretty cool. But overall, he feels like, I mean, he should be traumatized considering what he went through in his final 2 years of high school, but he's not the same Logan. He is not, not at all. But Piz is also like, who's Piz? Who's Piz supposed to be? Is Piz supposed to be like the male viewer watching the show? And like they can like live out some cinematic fantasy with Veronica Mars? Because there's nothing else to him, but I do like him. I think that he's a charming character, and I think he has a few like really real things to say, like if it's not real, why do it? I do like Piz. I do. Uh, I even like him in the film, but we'll get there later. I think due to this weird structure, the one character who I think has a fully considered and fleshed out arc, kind of, as much of an arc as this idiot can have, is Dick Casablancas. And it's also an arc that taps into some an interesting psychology that I've never had the opportunity to identify with before. Dick Casablancas is really going through it, like really bad. He's in self-destruct mode. He's in fuck the world mode, and he's ruined internally over his brother's suicide and the fact that his brother was a mad bomber murderer, a psychopath. He doesn't. He blames himself, rightfully so. But here's the thing, Dick. Well, he's a dick, but Dick is also an idiot. He's also possibly the most stupid man on the planet. So he's going through all of these things, but he's not going through them poetically, which makes it like kind of heartbreaking. It's like you have to imagine that Beeve is always on his mind, right? Because he has these weird breaks of character, like Logan, who are you talking to on the phone? Parker. Parker. Hardly even know her. Hey Logan. Um, did you try to stop my brother when he jumped off the roof and killed himself? Out of nowhere, he says that. He can't poetically engage with these ideas. He shows up, he says that Beaver never cared about you, Mac. You were just his beard. Humiliates her because, of course, Beaver has to be haunting her as well. Oh, and by the way, Mac has quite a healthy and energetic sex life in the third season. But Dick isn't like Mac. Dick doesn't have like a single brain cell. Or if he has one, it's fried all the time. I love Dick. Go ahead, clip that. Clip me saying I love Dick because I fucking love Dick Casablancas a lot. Ryan Hansen does an incredible job this season. He gets these few moments and they're sprinkled in between, like over a long. Like in the first episode, he's like, he brings up beef. Then we wait like a lot of episodes before he casually brings it up again. And then when his father, Richard, finally comes back to be like, son, what are you doing here? I'm going to jail. Dick lets him have it. Dick goes in there like eyes red, like looking like he wants to punch holes in every wall across America out of frustration. He shows up and he's like, Dad, why you weren't even there for Beeve's funeral? For Cassidy's funeral, you weren't even there. You and I, Dad, we used to have contests to see who could make him cry first. I duct taped his hands and legs to a bicycle, and I forgot about him. And I looked out hours later, and he was just spinning around in circles, just riding that bike around in circles, terrified, traumatized, humiliated, and ashamed. Dick blames himself for that death. Dick blames himself for that suicide. Dick hates himself for what he did. The only problem is that Dick is too idiotic to really confront those things about his brother in a way that could help him evolve as an archetype. It's really fascinating, actually, and this isn't a criticism. If you did anything else with Dick, it would have been dishonest. This is perfect. Like normally, the himbo toxic as fuck dude, that archetype doesn't get these moments of introspection. So when you give him a traumatic event to try to recover from, he doesn't have the tools to do it. He doesn't know how to do it. Dick doesn't know how to get better. He apologizes to Mac and then immediately tries to kiss her because he's drunk, and then you have to doubt the legitimacy of that apology. Dick is too idiotic to actually have character development. And you can probably transpose that concept over to class. Some people are just too wealthy and just too spoiled to have any like true emotional growth. Dick Casablancas, there is a tragedy to Dick Casablancas. There's a big tragedy to Dick Casablancas. It's the tragedy of existential inertia, and it's the tragedy of idiocy. He's too much of an idiot to understand that he can't process the emotions that he has. And like Logan has these tender moments where he tries to reach out to him, but There's no way Logan knows how to make him feel better either. Let's go to the beach, let's go surf or something. It's kind of like when Dick tries to cheer up Logan, but like Dick clearly lacks empathy and like doesn't know what to do to help anyone. It's these two guys, Logan and Dick, who like want to be friends with each other and they are friends, but they lack the necessary empathetic tools to heal each other. And watching Dick go through this season having to rationalize and come to terms with um, his psychopathic brother's suicide, it's occasionally heartbreaking and it's like immediate too because it's urgent. There's an urgency to Dick Casablanca's emotions in this because it comes at you when you don't expect it to. Because he's always full of some piece of shit dick thing to say, right? And then you never know when he's going to just turn into this deeply hurt and like heartbroken older brother. Like you never know when that's going to happen, and when it does in this season, it's immensely powerful. So Ryan Hansen, cheers to you, mate. You were incredible here, and I think that's a fully considered arc. Like it's as much of an arc as Dick Casablancas could ever get, and you may call it incomplete, but I would say that the fact that it is incomplete makes it tragic and it makes it a lot more truthful and much more postmodern. I like the fact that I don't think Dick has closure or that he's even smart enough to understand what closure means, let alone how to come to it, like how to actually have closure over his brother. I really like Dick in this season. Kristen Bell is perfect, like in every episode. I hardly even think of Kristen Bell, right? Like, and she's like a massive celebrity. I think of Veronica Mars every time I see her. Like, she's not Kristen Bell, she's Veronica Mars when she's here, and she does so incredibly, so many beautiful moments with Veronica. Um, Actually, a lot of beautiful moments between Veronica and Dick this season. It's really, really cool. When they're on the elevator alone and they share a flask, and like later when she's like, "You, after all these years, how do you not instinctively fear me?" Like the bitch is back, man. I love Kristen Bell here. Veronica Mars. It's interesting because she got to come to this college and be like a different person, obviously, or herself, like authentically and as close to authentic as she could be as a 19-year-old private investigator. But in her old school, right, she was an outsider. She was an outcast. She was the champion of the misfits. Here, she had a chance to reinvent herself, but by the end of that, like a sex tape was leaked of her and Piz, and I think that that opportunity went out the window. I think that's what hurts her the most because she finally got the chance to reinvent herself. She finally had a chance to live outside of the shadow of Lily Kane, which seemed to dominate and just haunt her every waking moment, every part of her life in high school. And it seemed like she had finally gotten over that Lily Kane vendetta with the vengeance that was constantly on her mind, and she could reinvent herself. And perhaps that's why the series got a bit more laid back and lacked a little bit of focus and definitely an overall narrative with the singular big bad. Because she was having a chance to be with Piz and try something different and like reinvent herself as this new woman who doesn't have to avenge Lily Kane's death at every moment of her life. And that's what The Bitch is Back, I think, is so good and why it's one of the best Veronica Mars episodes. It's so good at bringing Lily Kane back effortlessly because her privacy is challenged, and the fact that that sex tape challenges the privacy, it also completely deteriorates and crushes this new reinvention of herself, which isn't like a fake version of herself. She was just more confident being who she was, and like people were more mature around her, and a lot more of them accepted her. She still made enemies a lot, but it was a different kind of thing. She didn't have this dark cloud of Lily Kane hanging over her, like following her every step. But when that sex tape leaked, she tracked it back to its source, and what does she see? She sees that it's at Jake Kane's mansion with a huge painting of Lily Kane. She'll always be there, Veronica. You can't escape your destiny, your fate. You can't escape your philosophy. You thought you got rid of Lily Kane. You thought you got rid of that nihilistic, super cynical edge to your character, to your cynical makeup. You didn't. She's right there, and she's forcing herself back in your life in this way. That's a theme that we'll have a lot more to talk about in the film. Not necessarily Lily Kane, but the idea that Veronica Mars can't abandon the role she was born to play out in Neptune, California. But that's something that we'll have to wait for the film to really explore. Oh, before this ends or anything, the new awful version of the theme, uh I'm so happy I don't have to listen to that again. It's so bad. It's so bad. Would you call it like minimalist? I just call it like nausea inducing. I don't like it. I like the original version. Well, season 4 had a good version of the intro too. Season three's intro, I think that all fans of Veronica Mars can agree is like, ew, gross, get it away from me, kill it with fire. Oh yeah, Sheriff Lamb got killed unceremoniously. He got killed off. From what I've been able to read, the actor was kind of a dick and had extremely loose lips when it came to keeping secrets about the show, and they just killed him off, which is fine. Jerry O'Connell replaced him pretty easily when the film came around, so like it's not a huge loss, but it's just another instance of parts of this season don't feel considered at all. You know, like oh, just killing him off like at your first convenience without any uh, idea of what's truly cinematic, because it's like oh wow, really, okay, he's dead. Well, okay, well you could have done something more with that death. It's just something else that feels a little half considered about the series. um the series lacks a lot of what makes the first two seasons great, uh, which doesn't make season 3 bad. It just makes it the worst season of Veronica Mars. I think that the film's better. I think that season 4 is better. And the first two seasons are a hell of a lot better than season 3. I think the books are better than season 3. It tries to make these earnest investigations through like a Stanford prison experiment, right? With Ryder Strong from Freaks and Geeks, and the kid from no, I'm sorry, Ryder Strong from Boy Meets World, and the Jewish kid from Freaks and Geeks, who I love. I love both of those people a lot, and like the dynamic between um like aggressive male dominant and passive male uh feminine, and like I like that a lot, especially when it comes into play with Mercer later on. Like that's cool. That's cool. um it's just not done right, is all I'm saying. It's just not done right, but that's a cool concept, and I actually like that concept a lot. But overall, season 3 trips and stumbles, but hey, it's still good. Like I do like the atmosphere of the college. I like the look of the library. I like the feel of the dorm rooms. I do like it aesthetically. And perhaps if we got another season, like right then and there, we could have done college justice. You know, we could have done some more things with those characters in that setting that would have justified season three's kind of weak uh weaknesses, which really just overwhelms well, always overwhelms my experience of the third season. Is that the weaknesses, I think you you have they're impossible not to notice, even when you're trying to be extremely charitable. It's a good season. It's fine. Um, but it's certainly the weakest point of Veronica Mars in all of media, film, books, television. It's the weakest thing that Veronica Mars has ever been a part of. So yeah, but hey, I don't hate it at all. Um, there are some interesting things. We've been talking for quite a long time, so definitely makes you think. Thank you for watching. I'll be back in a week to talk about. Oh, fuck yeah, dude. We're talking about the film. Talking about the film. Talking about the film Veronica Mars, which I love. I think it's really good. So that'll be cool. That'll be really cool, and I'll see you then. Thank you for watching me. It's always cool to have you guys around. Peace, motherfucker. Hey, I'm your cult boyfriend. We're going to be talking about the 2014 film Veronica Mars today. Veronica Mars may be the best cult show ever, and it has the receipts to prove it, right? What makes Veronica Mars the film so good and so cool and so much fun, and I think so important to media, is that it's entirely fan funded. Rob Thomas, and this is a pretty famous story. Rob Thomas put up a Kickstarter asking for $2 million, and that goal was reached almost instantly. Overall, over Kickstarter from the fans, the film received over $5.5 million, and well, the fans resurrected Veronica Mars. I think if we can take a quick look at the dedication, right, for the book, the $1,000 tan line that came out after the film. Rob Thomas wrote, "For all the Veronica Mars Kickstarter backers, you're like the people who clapped loud enough to bring Tinkerbell back from the dead. Except instead of clapping, you sent money. And instead of a tiny blonde fairy, you resurrected a tiny blonde detective." I think that's incredibly cool and incredibly important. Um, I think the film is great, you know. I think it's great. I think that a part of what's really cool about the film is that it's paid for by the fans and made for the fans. And a lot of the criticism that seems to come from it is that it's like fan service, which doesn't fucking make sense to me because the fans literally funded the film. They should get their money's worth. They should get what they paid for. Fan service, I think when the fans give you millions of dollars, like directly, you're allowed to shamelessly provide service for those fans. They're paying for a service. It's made by the fans, you fucking weird critics, man. I swear to God. But even then, we remove the fan service from it, which the fan service is a large part of it. There's still something entirely fascinating about the film. And by something, I mean many things. There are many things that are entirely fascinating about the film. Welcome to my video. I'm your cult boyfriend. Let's fucking get into it, bro. Firstly, I think it's really well composed. The composition is kind of magnificent. There's a certain excellent visual artistry that wasn't necessarily available in the show, but is on full display here. The cinematography is outstanding. I love the way that the film looks. There's a certain neo-noir quality that blends perfectly together with this sort of nostalgic yearning that's kind of trapped inside ultra-modernity. I think is really cool. The film opens with a recap. Veronica getting you up to date on all of her previous adventures from the show's first 3 seasons. And she says, when the class war comes, Neptune will be ground zero. It's been 9 years, and everything in Neptune is a hell of a lot worse. Um, Tensions between classes, between them, like the intensely stratified elite and impoverished, are so magnified, are higher than ever. What Veronica Mars the film is, it's an examination of addictive personalities. And I'm going to spend a decent amount of time on Veronica because it is a character study of Veronica and of her addictive personalities, of a way that she's trying to rationalize her mother's alcoholism with her own uh, addictive personality, being an adrenaline junkie, being perpetually attracted to Neptune and to all of the darkness and all of the skeezy parts that she just can't get enough of. Love is blind. But first, I kind of want to talk about Gia Goodman. In Martin Starr as Cobb, our villain, in Gia's words, he's a total trailer park weirdo. He kept Gia in a teenage stasis, lost futures, lost fortunes, held hostage by nostalgic longing and blue cool jealousy. So on my season 2 analysis video, I said I'm going to hyper focus on Gia when we get to the film. Well, hi everybody, we're at the film. It's time to talk about Kristen Ritter a lot. Though the whole point of Veronica Mars is that Logan is suspected of killing pop star Bonnie DeVille, or Carrie Bishop as she was known in high school, and to Veronica Mars fans, it looks like Logan killed her. She was a troubled girl, a drug addicted girl, because everyone has an addictive personality in this film. It's kind of the mantra. It's the primary theme of the film. But she's murdered, and to make a long story incredibly short, she was racked with guilt over the death of Susan Knight from high school. It was a party on a boat that like Gia and Luke and it was like Gia is his beard. Uh, Dick was there and Bonnie DeVille was there, and so was Stuart Cobbler, played by Martin Starr, who we haven't seen before, but Martin Starr is a welcome addition here. Party Down, another Rob Thomas project, but I think more importantly to the thematics of this film, Freaks and Geeks. I like that when Veronica Mars has bugged Gia's apartment, she sets the frequency of the bug to transmit through a radio station that is apparently a popular radio station, and on it, Cobb and Gia sleep with each other, and when Cobb's going back to his apartment, he passes by the guidance counselor from Freaks and Geeks, who is like, "Oh, you did it, bro! You really wanted that poor girl to say your name," and that's a great interaction. Martin Starr is like a trailer park dweeb dirtbag who looked with longing at Gia Goodman, at this 09er clique, and always wanted to be a part of it, so he inserted himself within it. He was a drug dealer, and he started blackmailing them over the death of Susan Kane, which was an accidental death, but he's largely responsible for. And these kids were thinking of, lost fortunes, lost futures, and they would do anything to keep their reputation intact. Anything that Cobb said. Gia has to live in that specific apartment so that Cobb can keep an eye on her at all times and fuck her whenever he wants to. Gia Goodman has not had a very pleasant existence since her father was exposed for being a massive pedophile, and Cassidy Casablancas killed him, blew him up. The Mad Bomber of Neptune blew up her father. Gia Goodman is being held hostage. And it's a part of her teenage character that was held hostage. Gia Goodman was never the brightest bulb, right? She was never the sharpest tool in the shed. And she's being forced to remain in this bimbo stasis by Stuart Cobbler, by Cobb, our big bad of the film. She's not allowed to grow as a character. Rob Thomas is very good because he did this in season 3 as well. And you can argue he did this with Cassidy, or with all of his most tragic characters, or possibly with all of his characters, right? Um, archetypes don't necessarily have the tools for emotional growth, for arcs, for true changes. But it's a lot more tragic when you can see what is holding them back from uh, attaining a sort of mature character growth. Like for Dick in season three, it was that he was too idiotic to understand the concept of closure, let alone mental health. I mean, here they do have a throwaway line that he's on pot now medically for chronic depression, which he absolutely does have. That wasn't just a throwaway joke. He definitely has it. But Gia Goodman is the flip side of that himbo coin of Dick Casablancas. Um, it's just that misogyny in Neptune is far more common than it's just that misogyny in Neptune uh, is a weaponized thing. Like a himbo with chronic depression, Dick Casablancas, no one's going to try to use him, right? No one's going to try to weaponize that. But a bimbo, but Gia Goodman, Gia Goodman's tragedy of idiocy, her tragedy of stupidity, is, I mean, misogynistic in nature. Cobb is keeping her, his whore, he's prostituting her out for a taste of like the elite upper crust culture, genes, biology. And Gia Goodman, you really can't do anything about it. Kristen Ritter was so amazing in this film. Gia becomes a fully fleshed out character here because it's a fully tortured one. She has no autonomy. She doesn't really have any opportunity in her life to truly feel free of guilt, free of shame, or to experience any sort of emotional growth because um, a sadistic prick named Cobb is forcing her to stay inside of this existential inertia, this stasis of teen wet dreams. That's that's what's happening to Gia. She's forced to stay a teen wet dream of Cobb's, and she's not allowed to grow. She's not allowed to experience emotional growth. And I think she secretly resents Veronica for seemingly being the only person who actually thinks that they can leave Neptune and grow more. I bet Gia wishes she could leave Neptune. I bet Gia wishes that she didn't have to stay directly across the street from Cobb's, that Cobb can look at her with his little telescope and just watch her undress, watch her in her most private moments, because another theme of Veronica Mars has always been privacy. And Gia Goodman never had privacy. And Veronica Mars had to attack that privacy to expose Cobb's entire control of Gia's life by bugging her. Gia Goodman is constantly on display. It's like her father, her father Woody Goodman, had her on display as this paragon of O-Niner virtue, as this like beautiful model of young, stupid, silly happiness. And then Cobb has kept her as like a doll, this thing that he could play with whenever he feels like. Malibu Barbie with an inner core of complete depression and empty sexiness. And if Veronica Mars is an examination of addictive personalities, if that's what the film is, uh, Cobb is addicted to his own psychopathy. Cobb is addicted to his dark psychology. Cobb is addicted to using these elite kids, these spoiled kids, as his own playthings to live out a deranged fantasy of high school cool that he could never get over even 9 years later. Actually, 10 years later, because they go to Veronica's reunion. And Veronica gets to punch Madison Sinclair in the face, and that's awesome. It's also cool seeing all the boys, fucking Logan and Weevil and Wallace and Piz, get into a huge fight over the fact that Madison played Veronica's college sex tape for everyone to laugh at and enjoy. It's cool seeing Corny making duct tape wallets on Etsy. See how that sounds realistic. That sounds fun. That makes sense. I hate when they do these reunion stuff and like everyone is like super successful. I like realism sometimes. Do I wish that Cobb was better developed? Not necessarily. I think that Cobb was developed, and I think that's like a meta narrative. Like the best postmodern flourish of the film is that Cobb is underdeveloped because of Cobb, Gia Goodman's life was severely underdeveloped. Like Gia Goodman as a woman did not get to develop like emotionally in a mature scope. She'll always just be this silly socialite. She was never allowed to develop herself into something more sophisticated because Cobb was keeping her in this stasis of nostalgia menacingly. So I think that Cobb being underdeveloped really speaks to the darkest themes of Cobb as a villain. I think that Cobb is a good villain. Martin Starr doesn't have a lot of screen time, but he makes the most of what he has, and I think that it's not necessarily what we feel about the villain, right? It's how we feel about seeing Gia Goodman being shot in the gut and dying, writhing on the floor. That's sad. That sucks. That's tragic. I loved Gia Goodman. I even loved her in season two. There just wasn't a whole lot to go into there, but she was consistently funny, like Dick Casablancas was, but the flip side of his himbo coin. I love Gia Goodman. And seeing her die here after she's like, this is the first honest scene I think we've ever experienced with Gia Goodman, and certainly that Veronica Mars has ever experienced with Gia Goodman. There's this untapped potential, this rage inside of her. Um, she's being held prisoner in the most luxurious penthouse in Neptune, California. Welcome to the BC, bitch. The tragedy of Gia Goodman was her inability to experience an arc. It was violently forbidden by Cobb, the nemesis of the film. Logan Eccles is really cool this season. I like this portrayal of Logan more than I like the season three interpretation of the character because this character, Logan in the film, still feels a bit violent, a he has a lot of dark edges to him. He is he's dangerous and he's attractive, right? He's very attractive, and seeing Veronica and Logan together is perfect. I love seeing them together. I also love seeing Leo for a moment. Leo's cool. I'm not sure if I've mentioned him in these videos. I like Leo. We'll definitely talk about him in the season four analysis where she's kind of tempted by Leo. But for now, Leo is consistently charming and super likable and extremely handsome. So it's always great seeing Leo. It is cool catching up with these characters and seeing what they're like. Dick Casablanca's Ryan Hansen still knows how to make me laugh and roll my eyes simultaneously without even putting much into it. Like Ryan Hansen nailed Dick Casablancas. He fully understands his character, and I love Dick. He's great. I love Dick. Okay. Clip that too. I love Dick. It's cool seeing Wallace and Mac. Mac's a little annoying. I do have to say, she was kind of grating. Um, also, Mac and Wallace, it's cool seeing them. No, it's fine. I'm not going to criticize it. I love seeing Mac and Wallace. It's cool. It's cool seeing those amigos together again. Weevil being sucked back into crime. The sheriff's station is just like outwardly corrupt now. Jerry O'Connell plays a very good Lamb, and yeah, it's cool. Oh, R.I.P. Sax. We have mustache for Sax today. I like Sax. He's cool. That's like a really violent death. Really well captured on film. It was really well structured. That car crash. It's really good. It's really good. Uh, Veronica's father is super upset with Veronica most of the time, but he has to accept the things he can't change, right? Piz is excellent in this film. Veronica chooses Logan, but also chooses Neptune. It's Neptune that she's choosing. This is an examination of addictive personality. And all throughout it, there's this voiceover motif of Veronica talking about her life returning to Neptune as if she was attending an AA meeting. She brings up her mother a lot. Her mother was a terrible alcoholic, and she knows that she's addicted to Neptune. She's addicted to the adrenaline, to the frazzled, fractured archetypes of neo noir mystery, and she's addicted to the tropes of Neptune, California. She's addicted to it. And in her absence, Neptune has gotten a hell of a lot worse. And she comes here and she tries to do what she can. She gets back into the mud and she rolls around. She's trying to figure out who she is. Like, who are you, Veronica? You can't escape your fate. Once an addict, always an addict. Veronica realizes who she is. She's a junkie. She's the most dangerous kind of junkie. She's addicted to payback. She's addicted to revenge. She's addicted to Neptune. She's addicted to the passion of Neptune. She's addicted to the hyperviolent romance of Neptune, to the unexpectedness of Neptune. She's addicted to gunshots. She's addicted to saving people. She's addicted to saving that part of herself that always feels like it's being held at gunpoint by the tyrants of wealth. She's addicted to Neptune, California. She's addicted to Logan Eccles. I think the most beautiful part of the film is where Veronica is supposed to catch a plane in the morning, and Logan offers the driver to the airport, and she's like, "No, I already promised my dad he could do that." He says, "I'll take you home then," and she goes, "Let's take the long way." And then you hear the beginning of the Sufjan Stevens Chicago. Dun 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 da 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 da. I was in love with the place in my mind. That Sufjan moment of clarity. It's so cool. And it's really romantic, and it's really like postmodern noir, and like I love it. It feels so cool, and that Sufjan song really just captures the vibe of the film so well. I love the way this film is shot. Incredible composition. I'm not done talking about Gia yet. I'm not done talking about her. This girl was murdered by some trailer park psychopath with a god complex. He was able to lord over this girl for 10 years. Was able to use her and use her up and then shoot her when he was done. What a despicable fucking dude. Fuck you, Cobb. But it's also speaking to a dark side of fandom. What I think a lot of critics don't understand about this fan service thing is that Cobb is like also representative in like a really nuanced and subtle way of those terrible parts of being in Hawk, of owing the less fortunate or just owing the fan, like eye screwing you, becoming hyper obsessed with you. It's about fandoms because Cobb is also like he's being juxtaposed in my mind with Hugh, with the red herring from earlier who was obsessed with Bonnie DeVille, who had like an obsessive murder wall of her and would sing her songs at karaoke's and dress up just like her and fantasize about being with Logan because Bonnie was with Logan. And it was an obsession she carried for a long time before she was even famous. When Carrie Bishop was still in high school, this chick was obsessed with her, just like Cobb was. It's about fans being weaponized, about stalkers being weaponized. It's about the weaponization of teen dreams. Now, someone like Bonnie, she was harmless, right? But not everyone is. Cobb is a deeply disturbed individual who found himself in a position of wielding a lot of power over the objects of his fantasy. I mean, that's what blackmail is. That's what sexual blackmail is. It's probably the worst form of objectification that someone who worships you can do, because only someone who worships the ground you walk on would try to commit sexual deicide every time he sees you. That's what Cobb does to Gia. So if it's a film made by fans for fans, we have to keep in mind that this film is showing two different versions of obsessive people, addictive personalities, sure, but it shows us Cobb and it shows us the woman who's obsessed with Bonnie DeVille, and neither of them are flattering at all, and one of them is as murderous, as cruel and psychopathic. It's a show about this is a film about addictive personalities. Fandoms, even of Veronica Mars, certainly express and display an extreme amount of obsession with these characters, with these archetypes. And they want these characters back, but a part of them doesn't want them to change because a part of them doesn't want their own lives to change. They want Veronica Mars to come back so they can feel like they're still there in that teen fantasy, in that teen mystery, and everyone's back where they're supposed to be. All the places are in their proper fit, and no growth really, so to speak, because growth is scary, change is unordinary, and I think fans were paying for something that was more similar to their tastes. Now Rob Thomas is kind of a genius, so he's able to do that while also exposing like the fragility of the psychopathic tendencies of those with addictive personalities. Gia, I think, is a fascinating symbol of an archetype who isn't allowed to grow, who's being kept in a stasis by her biggest fan, Cobb, like being kept in that stasis. And yes, he must have been obsessed with her body. Yes, a rockin' body, I get it, but he was like psychosexually obsessed with her, and he wanted to torture her, he wanted to hurt her, he wanted to kill her, he wanted to fuck her, and he did all of those things. He ruled her. He wanted to be her god because he was her biggest fan. This is a film about addiction, about compulsion, about obsession, about adrenaline. And this film can be very suspenseful when it wants to be. But like the Gia death, I think it does hit me pretty hard because Rob Thomas is so perfect at writing sometimes, because that scene where Gia lays out exactly what happened, like I said, I feel like it's the first conversation, the most authentic form of Gia we've ever seen, and the first time we really get to talk to Gia. And we realized that there was so much there that we didn't interact with because we weren't given the tools to do so. And she wasn't given the opportunity to reveal herself to us in a way that would bring out the pathos in an audience like that scene did. It reminds me of like thinking back to Cassidy, and I love that character so much, and how I'm like, man, I spent a good amount of time with Cassidy, but I wish I had some more scenes where we could have seen that true face that he keeps underneath. When we could have seen the rooftop of the Neptune Grand version of Cassidy. He does this with Dick, and like Dick expresses his chronic depression a few times in season three, but just barely enough for you to like beg for more interiority. Um, Post 9/11, post Columbine kids, they're really insecure and they're incredibly guarded, but they're also more sensitive than any other generation because of like the random violence that they think defines and dominates the era that they have come of age within. And Gia Goodman, man, the tragedy of Gia is death of potential, and it's so perfect and it's so beautifully done by Rob Thomas. And I loved Kristen Ritter in the film, and I think she was supposed this could just have been a rumor, but I think originally she was cast as Veronica Mars, or at least she auditioned for the role back in '03. So it's cool seeing her here, um, coming back to, I think, really have the best part of the film, which is her death scene, which is her exposition scene, her reveal, which is also the reveal of the pathos of the true core of her character, which is like super damaged and just a prisoner of her own wealth, a prisoner of her own um, kind of self-destructive behavior when she was in high school. And Cobb, I think he's a vicious fucking dude who can represent the darkest parts of the addictive personality. I mean, this film is a product of addictive personality. You don't just give $5.5 million to something that you're half interested in. Fans became obsessed with this show. That's what fans do. I mean, I'm obsessed with the show. I have two tattoo. I have Veronica's name tattooed on my body twice. Like, fans don't just like a show. Fans get obsessed with the show. That's how shows are kind of like designed. They're designed to be addictive and to foster addictive personalities. And I just think that Rob Thomas is the first person who really decided to study that kind of bizarre and occasionally psychopathic relationship that fans have with the media that they identify with the most. And like, there's a lot of fascinating things about the Veronica Mars film, but no one has really given it the time of day. No one has really provided like a true critical lens to it. So thank God I'm here. The fucking hero of the world is me. Yeah, I'm like some sort of saint. But there's a lot to dive into here. I don't think enough people uh, take this film as seriously as they should, because I haven't seen any of this that I'm talking about being expressed anywhere. And it's incredibly deliberate, and I think it's impossible to ignore. And what you all have to realize is that Veronica Mars will always be smarter than you, and that Veronica Mars does a great job of playing dumb. If you want to catch Veronica Mars, you got to wake up really early. But it's there, and you're implicated because we all have addictive components of our personalities. We're all there. And this film is just wonderfully made, and it's a wonderfully considered, thought out, plotted, and composed study of addictive personalities in all of their varying forms. And Kristen Bell did extraordinarily well in the film. Uh, she's always perfect as Veronica Mars, right? She never falters. She's like perfect. Always a flawless performance. And Veronica, like, this is the part where I think she's at her most heroic in this film, because like I've been in situations like this in my life where I'm like, why? I feel like I'm fighting who I truly am, even though that part of who I truly am um, makes me feel like a person. You know, like I don't know who I am. I know who I know who I'm not, but I don't know exactly who I am. And who I am is, I mean, a product of my addictions. It's difficult to embrace it, but sometimes that's what you have to do. because you're not just addicted to substances. That's not necessarily what I'm talking about or referring to. I'm addicted to a sort of intensity that has been absent in my life the last couple of years. I'm addicted to a kind of unpredictability, to a kind of yeah, to a kind of like teenage mindset freedom. I'm addicted to something. We're all emotional junkies, every one of us. Every last one of you. We're all emotional junkies. I'd rather be a junkie than a vampire. Veronica Mars is really good. It's a fucking great film. I do like seeing everybody, even for brief moments. You know, learn how to talk, Zach. Like Principal Clemens. I love seeing everybody, dude. They're really cool. And Neptune feels different. Like the composition of this film is really fucking great. Neptune feels different. It feels a bit darker. It feels more intense and it feels a little bit more dangerous and dirtier, you know? Like there may have been like rose-colored glasses of youth even in the first season of Veronica Mars, and even then it was like darkness and conspiracy and murder and sex everywhere. But now there's like a sort of like maturity here. And like rather than the film feeling jaded, disenchanted, or disconnected, you feel completely embraced by this newfound sophisticated darkness of Neptune in 2014. There's something about those bright lights. There's something about the way those bright lights call to Veronica and call to the viewer. There's something about Neptune that keeps us all wanting more, and we keep coming back, and we're never disappointed. Neptune forever. Being reunited with some of those feelings you had when you first watched the show as a teenager, being reunited with those feelings through a more mature lens. It allows you to re-examine your teenage posturing, your teen philosophy, and realize that you were kind of always right, and you just forgot that. Don't let your teenage philosophy die, because if you abandon that, people will get hurt. Don't forget who you are and who you were, and don't forget that bad people do bad things. If you're addicted to goodness, well, bad people who do bad things will be badly punished. I love you, Veronica Mars. Awesome. Yeah. What are we doing next? Next, we're covering both books, The $1,000 Tan Line and Mr. Kiss and Tell, both written by Rob Thomas with Jennifer Graham. I think they're both really good books. We're covering these next, so get on your reading glasses. So I've read both of these like at least twice. I recommend like actually reading them, but if you want, uh, my favorite way of experiencing the $1,000 Tan Line is like the audiobook actually is read by Kristen Bell. Whoa, fucking awesome, dude. It's really cool. So hopefully next time I'm here talking about Veronica Mars, you'll join me once more. and we can study the in between these two novels before we wrap up our study of Veronica with a season 4 video. But this has been my analysis of the film. Hope you enjoyed it. I love this film. I've watched it a countless amount of times. I think it's like a highly enjoyable film, a deeply complicated one, and an extremely underrated film and underappreciated uh, for a lot of different reasons and in a lot of different ways. I love this film to death. And I think that's actually all. Thank you so much for watching, and fuck, dude, reconnect. If you've been out of the loop for a while, reconnect. Reconnect with that part of your personality that was once addicted to feeling alive. It's worth a shot. That was almost another video going by when I don't mention that Ken Marino is hilarious as Vinny Van Lowe. That's all. That's all I have to say, I guess. I think he has one of the funniest lines in the film where he's like, I'm the reason the world knows Anne Hathaway has a vagina. Before me, it was like maybe, but now they know. Ken Marino rules. That's all. God, it was almost going to be another video where I forgot to mention that he's hilarious. Hopefully, I don't forget to mention him in the season 4 video. Thanks for watching. I'm your cult boyfriend. And if ever again, a greeting I send to you. Short and sweet to the soul I intend. $1,000 tan line sees Veronica Mars investigating the disappearances of two different girls, Haley DeWalt and Aurora Scott. Aurora Scott has a much deeper connection with Veronica as it leads her back to her own alcoholic mother, Leanne Mars, now Leanne Scott, married to Tanner Scott. And she finds out that, yeah, Aurora Scott is her stepsister, and she actually has a half brother. Whoa! These two missing girls, you think they're related at first. In fact, I mean, the whole title of this is like bullshit. It's a red herring. I think this is the best book. I'll get into it in a second. I'm just giving you the brief rundown of the synopsis right now, in case you were too lazy to read, or if you just want me to get to the good stuff, the insight. Um, Haley DeWalt's disappearance and Aurora Scott's disappearance are not connected whatsoever. Haley DeWalt was murdered by her boyfriend, who sucks, and I hate him. And Aurora Scott, I love her. She is like she was originally trying to dupe and con everyone with Tanner Scott, her father, because Tanner was like the reason why Leanne and Tanner met was at like an AA meeting or something like that, and Tanner was like a recovering con man and con artist, and that's how he brought his daughter Aurora up, like in those situations, and kind of fostered a uniquely criminal mind. And I really love Aurora Scott, but of course she staged her disappearance with her father, but then double crossed her father to have as much impact on Veronica Mars as she could, and to get more money out of the community of Neptune. Um, this is a very good book. I love it. Love might be a strong word, but you know what? I feel strongly about Veronica, so sure, I love the book. Why not? The second book is Mr. Kiss and Tell. Um, what's cool about these books is that we get to meet up with certain characters that we didn't get to see in the film. These books came out between the film and the fourth season. So in that book, the first one, we got to hang out with Leanne Mars and see what's going on with that side of her family. Here, we get to meet up with a Grace Manning, Meg Manning's little sister. Leo comes back in a pretty huge way. She gets a dog called Pony. Sheriff Lamb is out out as sheriff. Fuck him, he's gone. And everybody wins and they're happy. And now what's the new sheriff's name? You guys? I was gonna say Langdon, but I was like, this isn't Dan Brown, Zach. It's not Langdon. It's not like she's gonna go and solve some Da Vinci codes. Whatever. This one's like a serial rapist and murderer who hangs out at the Neptune Grand. This is everyone's go-to favorite of the two Veronica Mars novels. Everyone says that Mr. Kiss and Tell is the better read, like unanimously, and also that it's just the only important one to read. Fuck all of you who believe that. This is a good book. I always found it difficult to get through. I think that it's trying like to be pretty edgy and super dark. I think people just like it because it is a bit more sorted, but it also feels a bit more like a bit more like I don't know. I don't know. It's a good book, but the $1,000 tan line is the book that I love. This one is the book that I kind of have difficulty finishing. Although I love characters like Petra Landros, who is in this one as well, but and the Neptune Grand I think is a fascinating location. I've always loved the Neptune Grand. I feel like there's a well, I do have like a thing with hotels that I might have learned from ghost movies or like noir films, but like hotels have always had this kind of poetic like effect on me. Like when I see them portrayed or read about them portrayed in any sort of way that's like kind of morbid. I just love hotels. Okay, and Neptune Grand is one of the most interesting hotels, thanks primarily to my favorite scene in all of Veronica Mars taking place on the rooftop of it with Beeve in the season 2 finale of Veronica Mars. It's a good book. It's a good book. It's just I feel weird calling two books that most people haven't read, even within the fandom, overrated. But it is kind of overrated. It's not like even if I was being the most charitable person in the world, it's not like leagues above this one. I really like this one. I think that because they talk about like which books you have to read in order to be fully prepared for season 4. And honestly, you don't have to read either of them, but they are good. They're supplemental. They're not necessary, but they are both good to read. But people normally say read this one because of Pony and Leo, and that's superficial bullshit. I think that Rob Thomas, it's this one. If you want to know what should prepare you for the spring break bomber of season 4? Probably read the first novel that deals with the spring break kidnapper, because we get into a lot of the socio economic those twisted real estate deals that Rob Thomas always seems fascinated with. He always seems extremely fascinated with like in season 2, he seems fascinated by Neptune's real estate monopoly, real estate market. He seems just like Chinatown was, just like great neo noir always is, as like real personal betrayal, like personal murder, personal hardships are always mired in the background of these huge political plays. Um, these huge corporate power moves made by the rich, wealthy, and beautiful that the poor who end up being like the victims or victimized by economic opportunity or like economic privilege, they become victimized by those situations, but like they're almost so insignificant as to not even fully understand the full scope of betrayal. I think Rob Thomas is a genius when it comes to juggling all of these different themes. Uh, and I think that Veronica translates into books extremely well. Like I've read, Buffy books and Firefly books and all sorts of shit. But these, obviously written by the creator himself with Jennifer Graham as a co-writer. Um, and Veronica Mars, there is, since it's partly neo-noir influenced, there is this kind of dime store uh cheap novel um component to the show as a whole anyway. And the quips translate well. The quips hit every time. It's still really witty, it's still really provocative, and it's still incredibly moving. And I think it translates perfectly into books. And Rob Thomas understands the character dynamics and their limitations better than anyone else. And the fact these are books, other considerations could be made. You have the license to do certain things that you certainly would be more penalized for if it was in television or film. Um, I think that that's where the $1,000 tan line really shines because we all love Logan and Veronica. I love Logan and Veronica. Logan and Veronica are a perfect couple. It's just that Rob Thomas understands that the appeal to their relationship is also the tragedy of the relationship. They can't be together. They don't work together cinematically. They work well in our imagination. They work well in our mind's eye of happily ever after. But Veronica Mars and Logan Echolls are two of the most damaged characters in all of teen drama. And if you put them together, they can't last because Logan starts to change, starts to mature, and Veronica despises him for it and actually becomes less attracted to him for that. Well, she doesn't despise him for it. She projects onto Logan her inability to cope with her own anger and her own toxic traits. I love Veronica Mars. She's my hero, but we'll get into that component of her character, the toxic erotic component of Veronica Mars when we cover season 4 because Rob Thomas masterfully deconstructs their relationship in it, but he understands that you can't have them together because they will self-destruct as a couple. That's why they didn't work in season 3. That's a large part of why season 3 didn't work. What we like from Veronica and Logan is seeing them come together and collide in a romantic way, in a dire way, and in tragic forms. That's why the film is so good because it's about them getting back together, but we don't actually like to see them together. And that's the tragedy of Logan and Veronica. And the $1,000 tan line has the opportunity to keep them removed because it takes place after the movie, right? And he's overseas for like 6 months in the Middle East. And the conversations that Veronica and Logan do have are stilted or jeopardized by the technology that they're using to speak to each other through. Very disconnected, literally. Often calls are dropped, emails go unread, and it's the only way that they can stay together. Here, you get some seeds laid for the future struggles that Veronica Mars will have in season 4. Not as interesting to me because in season 4, that's done so well. Uh, you have to keep them apart or else it doesn't work. And that's what the whole character study of season 4 is about. It's about forcing them together, forcing Veronica Mars to face the idea of maturity, of a notion of forever, of security. But she's far too much of an adrenaline junkie, and there's a selfish part of her romantic identity that punishes Logan for maturing and becoming a little bit more sophisticated as a man. In order for Veronica to have growth, Logan can't be there. It's really weird. It's really weird. She only grows when she can collide with Logan in an erotic context, but when she's stuck with him, like once they've kissed and defied the odds, right? 2 years later and they're still together, that's when Veronica feels boring. She feels that she's a boring person when she does. All of this stuff I'll be talking about in season 4. I'm just saying that part of the structure of the $1,000 tan line that I really appreciate is how easy it is to keep them separate. And I think that it's a more subtle way, and a more like natural and practical way of saying that there are differences between them by actually using like technology, a symbol of ultra-modernism that keeps them apart, that keeps their conversations feeling contrived, because they're always timed and there's always delays due to, Skype phone calls or Zoom or whatever they were using here. And it also gives Veronica an out because she does like it when Logan is doing dangerous shit. And she's like, I don't want to know, but I do want to know. It's that kind of thing. They're I can't wait to talk about season 4 with you all because that's where Veronica Mars is truly investigated as an adult character. And it's kind of unforgiving, you know. The cost is huge in season 4. The character study of Veronica Mars comes at a huge, unreasonable cost. But we'll talk about that when we get to season 4. I think these books are well structured, well plotted. I think that Aurora Scott is a fascinating villain here. I think you can see a lot of Veronica in Aurora. That like they're not related, but you can totally feel something of a stepsister from hell in the energy of the scenes where she's like tied up on the rug. And I think her father is also tied up in that same scenario. And you can see Leanne in Aurora, and you can see a vitriol for Leanne in Aurora. You can see certain parts of Veronica in Aurora that I think are necessary things for this character to challenge. A certain part of her anger, her youthful anger that she will never outgrow. Once again, though, in season 4, we'll actually be talking about a protege for Veronica Mars, who is a lot more reasonable and sensible than Aurora Scott. Aurora Scott, I just like this antagonistic quality here. And I like that Leanne has been made a mark, been made a fool, because Leanne conned Veronica and Keith for an extremely long time and hurt them a lot. And it's interesting to see Veronica come to her aid and then see that her own mother has been made a complete mark and a fool of. Um, and I guess I just like Aurora Scott's energy, her style. I like the idea of like she was raised by a con man to con people, you know? And then when Tanner Scott tries to change, she's like, "No, this isn't what we do. We do what we do. We do it." And you can see parallels between Veronica and Keith, like Keith being mad at Veronica for wanting to be a private investigator as opposed to a lawyer, like he dreamt of for her. He dreamt of a different sort of future for her. But at the end of the day, it's like, Dad, what the fuck do you expect? You raise your daughter in a certain way and she wants to be like you. If you don't want her to be a private investigator, that's a form of self-hatred that you're projecting onto your daughter, which can be abusive no matter how old your daughter is. And no matter the morality of the occupation that your daughter is trying to pursue, like a private investigator or like a con artist and a criminal, like Aurora Scott learned how to do that from watching her father do that effortlessly for all of her youth, and she wants to grow up to be like her father. Once again, Tanner Scott's self-hatred projecting onto his daughter. His daughter rebels against that as if abused, as if slighted, because she was both of those things in a certain kind of way, because all she was trying to do was be like her father. She is a product of who raised her, ultimately. And who knows? This is a more hopeful meeting with Leanne and also Hunter, Veronica's related half brother, who she meets. You know, seems like it could be adorable. But Mr. Kiss and Tell, yeah, it's a bit more intense and it's a bit more graphic and it's a bit more on the shady side of Neptune. But I like Leo. Leo is cool. I just don't actually give a fuck about Leo, I guess. I like Leo as he's used in season 4, you know, as this temptation that there's part of Veronica that she's never maybe never going to be able to completely outgrow, but she can deconstruct it and learn from it and mature from it and almost buy into its $1 million smile and charm, right? Because Leo is a cool guy. It's just I don't want to read about him. I don't like him that much. But maybe you do. But once again, season 4, Leo's a lot more interesting there. These are good primers. These are good. uh, I say read them if you're a big Veronica Mars fan. But they're not like completely necessary, right? They're not. I think that diehard marshmallows can pretend that you have to read them, but you don't. But every self-respecting one should at least listen to the audiobook of $1,000 Tan Line because Kristen Bell reads it. And every so often, I mean, once again, I mean, she's just great at voice work, always has been great at voice work. So her reading is really exceptional. But For me, you do get some opportunities to hear her impersonations of the inflections of the speech patterns of her co-stars, you know? Like, you can hear her do a Jason Doring or, or an Enrico. You can hear her do everybody. And she has those speech patterns down packed, and it's really, really enjoyable. And yeah, she reads in a very suspenseful and meaningful way too. She's always been good at voice work. I remember being a kid playing Assassin's Creed and being like, "Man, this is such a compelling character," and learning it was Kristen Bell. It was wild. Renaissance woman, right? But these are two really good books, and if you're a fan of Veronica, definitely read them. They are, I believe, Rob Thomas claims 98% canon. I don't know where that 2% isn't, but I mean, that's up for him to decide to forget. But really, you read this, and it might make season four a little bit more sophisticated or more heavy, or make it feel more cohesive, right? Because I think a lot of people's problems with season four were like they felt like they were being blindsided by a lot of the themes that they were exploring. But I guess if you read the books, you're kind of mentally prepared for these dilemmas, especially between Veronica and Logan, and also how seedier, how much more corrupt Neptune has just got as a place. You know, I guess these are definitely good to prepare you for how far season four is willing to go in its character study of Veronica Mars. Season four, I think, is a masterful season, and that's what we're going to be talking about next. I hope you enjoyed my videos about these books. I don't have too much to say about them, but I find them extremely entertaining, and I do recommend them. Because it's something else, because I love the structure of the show, at least the first two seasons, and I do really, really admire the structure of the 2014 film as well. I love Rob Thomas's ability to plot a narrative and to actually see it like spelled out for you. It makes it if you're like me and you like reading deeply into structure and narrative decisions and things like that, the scope, reading it it kind of just illustrates it perfectly for you. So you're like, oh my God, there is such a literary component. There is uh, this narrative approach is really beautiful to see actually spelled out for you. Um, you can see where there's a science to the tragedy, and that's what I love most about it, I guess, is these are kind of like peeks behind the curtain of Rob Thomas's very peculiar and unique genius. And yeah, I love Veronica Mars in any form, but especially especially in ones that I think elevate her character, and the books do that. I love Veronica Mars to death, no matter what form she takes. Thank you for watching. I'm your cult boyfriend. Yeah. Yeah, next week, season four. I'm ready. Are you? Wow. Not gonna lie, the ending of season four always gets me emotional. It's really messed up, isn't it? I'm your cult boyfriend. We're talking about season four of Veronica Mars, and I'm wearing my pretty in pink t-shirt, which should signal to you that this is the last season, the last available piece of media that we have for Veronica Mars. I don't think it's the end of Veronica Mars. I think we'll be seeing her in some form, in some way, at some point. I don't think that we're done with Neptune. Not really. Never say never when it comes to Veronica. That's something that every marshmallow needs to learn. Happily learn. Season 4. I think season 4 is a masterful season. I think it's fascinating for a lot of different reasons. It's a bit of a touchy subject for fans of the show because it's a little unmerciful and part of it feels unfair. And they did some extraordinarily daring things near the end of the run, the 8 episode Hulu revival. So Veronica Mars season 4 is a character study of Veronica. And I think it's an expertly crafted character study because we're able to lock on to this person, this girl who she's my hero. I'm sure she's a lot of your heroes and a lot of your crushes, like she means a lot to us. And we're able to deconstruct her and figure out if she could ever be well. Veronica Mars started off in 2004 as this post 9/11, post Columbine, deeply cynical look at the teen dream and how that fits with a nihilistic view of justice. So Veronica was always this extremely guarded character, this character who was angry constantly, this character who was deeply tortured in her own way, and a pessimist through and through. And then fast forward well into the new millennium, and that kind of antisocial identity that made Veronica Mars strong in the first place, which made her resourceful in some wildly extreme contexts, her personality it now conflicts directly with the modern ethos, with the ultra modern ethos. She's this girl who has been backed into a corner, and just like a dog being backed into a corner, it will bite you wherever it can, and it's constantly in that fight mindset. And it's like those damaged, toxic traits within Veronica are being punished by the ultra modern world, which is a lot more sensitive, and I think tries to be a lot more sincere. It's just that people like Veronica Mars, people like myself, we're very quick to judge and determine the artificial qualities of those around us, the hypocritical ones, those unforgivably hypocritical components of our communities. Like, we are very quick to jump the gun and burn some bridges. I've burned like a million bridges. I am the king of burning bridges, okay? I've burned way more bridges than you ever had. It's not even a contest. People like Veronica and I, and possibly you, were brought up to be that guarded, to be that kind of cynical about the dynamics of our interpersonal relationships. Be cynical about the human condition as a whole, as it stands, changed by 9/11 and Columbine. Like, it was almost predetermined that we'd end up cynical and nihilistic with a perpetual chip on our shoulders. And Veronica seems to be punished within this ultra modern ethos that has just gotten over it, right? Has just moved past it. And she seems to be a relic of a bygone angst. And I think that's what makes this show, this season, so powerful, because she's still full of angst. As she tells Maddie, she's still angry. She never got over it. It's about a bygone teen angst. That kind of makes you truthful. So many parts of Veronica are deconstructed here. Her relationship with Logan is beautifully deconstructed. She clearly loves Logan. Logan and her father are the two most important people in her entire life. But she's far more attracted to Logan when he acts out in violent, random ways. She loves those violent outbursts. She loves season 1 and 2 Logan. She loves when Logan is unpredictable. She is like it erotically charges her, and she just can't help herself, and she fucking loves it. And that it's something she really has to confront because Logan has matured. Logan has become a more sophisticated archetype, and Logan wants to marry her. Logan wants to have children with her. Logan respects her. He wants to marry her because he respects her, and he wants to have children with her that would inherit those traits. I love Logan in this season because Logan was able to move on with a new sincerity. There's still that angst inside of him, still that fire that Veronica is unwilling to let go of. There's still that fire within Logan, but like through therapy, through the armed forces, through Veronica, through dreams that he must possess of a future shared with her, he has become more mature, more responsible, more accountable, healthier in every conceivable way. And Veronica secretly loathes him for that. But it's a lot of self projection, right? Because Veronica is projecting onto Logan those things about herself that she believes she'll never be able to reconcile. Um, she's projecting a decent amount of self-hatred onto Logan for Logan's capacity to change and Veronica's inability to do the same thing. I believe Veronica sees that sort of change as weakness because it's not necessarily change in her eyes. I think she sees Logan as becoming tamed by the status quo, domesticated by the complacency of Neptune in a large way, and Veronica will never allow that to ever happen to her. Veronica has a protege this season named Maddie, and I loved Maddie. Maddie's father was killed in the first of several bombings featured in this season. This season is about trying to find who they call the Mad Bomber of Neptune, but I'm sorry, Patton, but that title has already been taken. I haven't forgotten about the psychotic boy wonder who blew up a bus in an airplane. I haven't forgot about Cassidy. Cassidy is still, I think, the greatest villain that Veronica ever faced. But season 4 really solidifies the idea that Rob Thomas, he views villains as like humiliated. He views villains not as things to even be momentarily glorified in their moments of revelations. They don't get to revel in their despicable deeds. Rob Thomas wants to embarrass these villains. Like Patton Oswalt is so good in this season that it makes me hate him. It makes me not like him anymore. He is so good in this season. Patton Oswalt plays the bomber. He is the bomber. Well, he and Big Dick Casablancas are the bombers, but they're like unrelated to each other. Patton picks up where Big Dick left off, but not for the same motivations. Interestingly enough, Big Dick's motivations I would argue that in a weird, morbid, and poetic sort of way, Cassidy actually did get revenge upon his father. Because it's the Phoenix Land Trust and the fact that he was using that company, which was invented and founded by his dead psychotic son, that like he was using the Phoenix Land Trust to assume different roles within the shell corporations that the Phoenix Land Trust had um, possessed to create a monopoly, a real estate monopoly, and drive Neptune itself into this ultra rich center that is cruel and classist and plastic and sanitized of all originality, of all actual humanity, a playground for the rich, wealthy, and beautiful. Um, Big Dick used the Phoenix Land Trust in order to secure his real estate monopoly. The Phoenix Land Trust is what gets him exposed by Maddie, and then Veronica hears about this information. The Phoenix Land Trust was owned by Cassidy, and I like to think that in a poetic and morbid sort of fashion, um, it's the idea that Big Dick was trying to bastardize and use this invention of a son that he never cared for or recognized as a masculine individual or as a person who even possessed individual qualities worth investing time within. I think that Cassidy ended up getting his father killed because his father couldn't help himself around the $1 million cookie jar, right? While Big Dick was in prison, which is something that that Cassidy basically got him arrested. The events of season two, right? Not basically, he exposed him. He got his father arrested. That was part of his revenge. I just think the revenge he wasn't alive to see was in a large way, I believe he's responsible for his father getting beheaded by a samurai sword by two cartel hitmen. And I love that he's beheaded with the samurai sword, with like this token of absurd wealth and immaturity. Maddie sees that. That's that symbol, that cultural symbol inside of his mansion, the samurai sword, and says, "Wow, man child," and he's beheaded by it. And there are Freudian concepts to this beheading as well that I do love, especially if you're like me and you're relating it to in a symbolic relational form to Cassidy Casablancas, which I think you should do because it makes it a lot more interesting. But yeah, I love that he's being beheaded within this mansion, that this huge token of wealth by like the commodification of a cultural symbol of both wealth and masculine immaturity. Uh, by two cartel hitmen who are definitely products of the the underbelly of the crime world, places that Big Dick Casablancas is dedicated to erasing from the makeup of Neptune, California. So that's like really cool. And Big Dick's right hand man was played by J.K. Simmons. He played Clyde in this season, and he has some wonderful scenes with Keith. I do like their relationship a lot. It's a really fun friendship that offers a lot of characterization for the both of them. If you're like me and you watched Oz when you were younger, you won't be able to see J.K. Simmons in a prison setting without thinking, oh man, wow, remember when he played a Nazi who like was literally the devil for like 6 years? That's the weirdest thing about J.K. Simmons becoming famous was my exposure to him was mentally scarring when he played Schillinger on Oz. But he's great. He's never not great. J.K. Simmons is a delight on Veronica Mars. And now to finally get back to Patton Oswalt, Ebner, playing the true Mad Bomber in a large way. He doesn't have an economic motive. He has extremely selfish and narcissistic ones. He is a bit of a psychopath. He is a little bit psychotic, but he's also just an embarrassing little cretin, um, a pitiful looking little hobbit, isn't he? Uh, Part of what makes the final minutes of this show so difficult is that he doesn't seem like a worthy enough opponent for Veronica. But I think that's kind of Rob Thomas's point. You could be outwitted and outsmarted. You could be outmaneuvered by a piece of shit hobbit looking like Pizza Man. He kills Logan Eccles. He blows him up. And I think that right there is why most fans resent this season. And honestly, it's partly why I think it's so perfect. Because a large part of Veronica Mars has always been about tragedy. And what makes tragedies so tragic is the fact that they're not impossible to divert. The most affecting sort of tragedy are the ones that you see coming. And you can see this coming. And Veronica sees this coming, but Veronica's just a few seconds too late, and she loses the man she was just married to. And we lose Logan Ackles. We lose an incredible character. A character who went through the most growth, more growth than anyone else on the whole show has gone through. And he was punished for it by wet dreams that Veronica would have, these erotic fantasies that Veronica would have about Leo, by Veronica's indignant indifference to his maturity, by Veronica's refusal to view Logan as something that has grown. Veronica sees herself as stuck within this angst-riddled stasis, this stasis of a teenage sort of anger, which is the best sort of anger because it's not only liberating, but it is necessary to remind you who your villains, like who your enemies are. She needs to keep in that mindset because that's how she gets her job done. It's a beautiful deconstruction of Veronica because we're doing a character study of her toxic traits, and she has several of them. And I think that she is really hurtful to Logan in this season. But we have to remember that it's all like self-projection, self-hatred projected onto Logan, that every neglectful thing she does to Logan, that every hurtful, mean, or hypercritical thing that she does to Logan is something that she's doing to herself tenfold, um, in a more complicated and less direct sort of way. Logan just wanted the best for Veronica. Logan just wanted Veronica. Logan wanted Veronica in his life because it's because of Veronica that he has changed into this um, true man that he is near the end of his life. It's because of Veronica. Veronica's dedicated to this stasis. Veronica is determined to stay in this mindset of total and complete angst because the villains of her life, they saw to it that she can't grow. As if she grows, she becomes contrived. As she grows, she becomes complacent and boring. And Veronica Mars can't allow that to happen to herself. And Veronica sees a sort of domestica within the relationship that Logan wants to have with Veronica, which is, you know, continence, bloodshed, foreverness. Hell, and you see this stuff like telegraphed from the first, like pantomimed ceaselessly from the very first. She first kisses Logan after he beats the shit out of Jonathan Taylor Thomas. And the most romantic moment on all of Veronica Mars that like I think most fans would agree is that speech about like our I thought our love was gonna span, continents and bloodshed. This kind of promise of a romance that is never stable, but is constantly has a lethal determination, and less of a romantic one. Or maybe it becomes romantic because of its lethal qualities. Like that's always been what has attracted Veronica in the first place. But Veronica tries to grow this season and she marries him and she grows a little bit, and then boom, you're too late. Your arc came too late. And postmodern masterpieces like Rob Thomas's Veronica Mars has no sympathy for meta narratives, no sympathy for arcs that complete 1 second too late. And Logan dies, and Veronica leaves Neptune because Veronica lost. Veronica lost this season. That great postmodern art has no time for lost time. Veronica Mars failed. She caught the pizza guy, sure. But she lost Neptune. Dick Casablancas won Neptune in a huge way. Big Dick Casablancas, not little Dick Casablancas. It is really nice seeing Ryan Hansen return as Dick, being a complete moron. And it's lovely seeing Wallace. Mac isn't in this season, but I didn't really like her in the film, so it's no big loss, personally. Uh, I'm fine without Mac. We even see Parker. Like, Veronica had the temptation of Leo, and Leo has only gotten more and more handsome, let's be real. And Logan had to see Parker. And Logan had to realize why I wanted to marry Veronica Mars. And it's the same reason why I would say that Veronica is my hero. Because I respect her. Because he respects her. Because Things that would normally completely crush and defeat a person, Veronica always gets up from. And that's true to a certain extent, but she carries that pain with her. She carries her defeats, and even her victories are always sprinkled with an unforgiving amount of defeat. And this is her greatest defeat, right? She had an oversight. She had one lapse in judgment. She should have remembered the backpack, but she didn't. She should have known about the bomb, but she couldn't. She was busy fulfilling an arc, getting married with Logan. And Neptune shows no mercy, and she has to leave it for good. So I really enjoyed this season. I thought season 4 was an excellent character study of Veronica Mars. I think that fans have a problem with it because it is very cynical. But I'm not sure if fans remember that the first season was very cynical too. She's just gotten more cynical over time and she hasn't changed. And I don't blame her for not changing, but I'm very proud of her for changing near the end. It's cynical, and yeah, there's a large part that's like, I can't believe this stupid fucking Hobbit pizza guy blew up this special forces Marine Logan who we love. He doesn't feel worthy, but no one would feel worthy, right? And we don't want to add worthiness to a villain. Like Rob Thomas definitely doesn't want to do that. He doesn't want to glorify his villains in any way. Um, the people who hurt other people like that, who destroy families like that, they aren't worth sensationalizing or liking in any huge way. Aaron Eccles was a psychotic man-child. Cassidy Casablancas was a paranoid and insufferable loser. And Epner, Patton Oswalt in Veronica Mars season 4, was a dork with delusions of grandeur who learned from the internet how to build a bomb. That's all these ugly, ugly archetypes amount to, in a large way. I think symbolically within this postmodern context, Epner didn't kill Logan. Veronica's refusal to change. Veronica refused change, refused security, refused the concept of happily ever after with Logan. She refused it all, and she lost it all. She said yes way too late. And I think Veronica knows that, and that's what drives her out of Neptune. Now, I don't think we're done with Veronica. I think we'll be seeing her again. I would have actually loved to see maybe like a spin-off of like Maddie learning from Keith, seeing Veronica every once in a while. I want to see I want to see these characters once more, and maybe once more after that. And I don't think we're done. But losing Logan, that's the craziest thing that Rob Thomas could have done. And he did it. And in my opinion, he pulled it off because that's what makes me cry, hearing his voiceover at the end. The reasons why he would marry Veronica Mars. They're the same reasons why we all have crushes on her or why we want to be like her, why she's our hero. That makes me cry. She's driving out of Neptune, and I feel like we're going with her. Maybe we can all finally be out of that angst, out of that unending angst that was left over as this traumatic reminder of our youth. Maybe we can be done with that trauma. Because if you keep the trauma of your youth inside of you forever, then it will only lead to a catastrophe in your adult life that maybe you can't walk away from, and maybe you shouldn't. Maybe you shouldn't walk away from it. Maybe it'll be that pulverizing and that complete and total. Maybe it'll be the holocaust of the self, like the loss of Logan was to Veronica. I think this is an incredible season. I think it's masterful. I think that it's saying so much, and I love it to death. It's a beautiful character study of Veronica Mars, an excellent deconstruction, and one of the best pieces of straightforward postmodern art that I have ever seen. I think Veronica Mars is incredible, and I love it. Season 4 is unreasonably good because it does unreasonable things unreasonably well. A postmodern masterpiece for sure. Season 4 of Veronica Mars. Yeah, it's perfect television. And Kristen Bell deserves all the awards in the world. She went to a lot of dark places, a lot of very funny places, a lot of sardonic ones, and a lot of knowing ones, sensitive areas explored by Kristen Bell, one of the most gifted actors of her generation. Give her all the awards. She brought Veronica Mars to life in a way that compelled me to obviously get her name tattooed on my body twice. I love this character to death, and I like that this character was put up under a microscope, and we were able to take her apart and see exactly where the break was, see exactly what wasn't working, and see if we could fix it. And some things just are unfixable, and some things you don't fix in time. And that's the tragedy of Veronica Mars. It always has been, and it always will be. And I like that. We get to go on this journey of examination, of investigating Veronica Mars together as adults, growing up with this show as teens, because we can gaze inside of ourselves in that same way. Through a prism of nostalgia, we can figure out what's wrong with us, each and every one of us, and we can do what we can and hope that it's enough and hope that we're in time. Growing up in your 30s, it's not some boring act. It's a series of explosions within your soul. Thank you for watching my video about season 4 of Veronica Mars. I got some True Detective vibes from this season, especially from the new intro. Chrissy Hind, I believe, provides the new rendition of "We Used to Be Friends," which I think is really cool. And like from that intro, yeah, you get some True Detective vibes, and it's possible that Rob Thomas saw the first or second season of True Detective and went, "I would love to place Veronica in this context and actually get to investigate her." Who's Veronica going to investigate this time? Well, it's her. It's herself. Rob Thomas is a genius, and Veronica Mars season 4 is perfect. And that's all. Thank you for watching. I've been your cult boyfriend. Subscribe, comment, share this video, and stick around. You never know what you're gonna get with me.